Hi guys, welcome to the Jinn&Tonic show. And of course, as soon as I hit start broadcast, I'm starting to cough. Welcome everybody. It's the Jinn&Tonic show. It's the 7th of December 2018, 8 o'clock UK time. And we are the Jinn&Tonic show where we discuss Islam. We critique Islam. We don't attack. We critique the ideology and not the people. We use facts, reality, and reasoning. And very important, we condemn categorically any kind of abuse of people. We categorically condemn slavery and violence. And personally, I categorically really condemn any kind of, I don't know, amputation or mutilation of the body that is not medically required. We embrace free speech and criticism, as long as it's factual and constructive criticism. I think this is going to be my future or my starter sermon before we go into medias res. Okay, what we do is look at different aspects within Islam. Now, the one thing is that we don't go and say, well, because the Bible says something, that means the Quran says something else. No, the two have nothing to do with each other. We are only looking at Islam. Greetings, everybody. We have 20 people watching. Welcome. Brilliant stuff. Islam is the best science book. Absolutely. This is the topic we're still going to have today, because last week we started watching a video on, well, not on a scientific discussion between SkyDivePhil and a Muslim apologist by the, I don't know if he really is, if that is really his name, but he goes by the name of Subboor Ahmad. Hi from Hamburg. Welcome, Hamburg. Welcome to the Jinn&Tonic show. Any kind of comments that I need to... Oh, sorry, Rob is going to be a little bit late today. This is why I'm all on my own, so I'm feeling very lonely here. So I'm wondering if I should just put the link in the chat and say, just somebody join me. I don't know. It's dangerous. I'm so afraid of somebody coming here and then causing us to shut down for a while. Well, I'm actually feeling like really hot at the moment. I don't know if you know the feeling, if you've really embarrassed yourself, if you've really put your foot in it and you feel, you know, the entire body temperature, all the heat going up into your neck, into your head and everything. And I feel so embarrassed, because what just happened is I watched the re-upload by Abdullah Samir, where he said he was... well, banned from Facebook for a while for a comment because he supported another comment. I'm not going to go into all that. But what happened is I got confused. And I thought when Hassan Radwan made a comment, and I thought he was talking about Asadullah Al-Andalusi, the Dawah Films Kevin guy. And I made a comment. I said he was such an idiot when he came on the Jinn&Tonic show, and he made such a fool of himself, and blah, blah, blah. And it turns out that Hassan was not even mentioning this guy, Al-Andalusi guy, but he was actually talking about Abdullah Samir. So I feel such a total idiot that I made this really big blunder, this huge mistake. So I'm really feeling really stupid at the moment. But luckily I found that you can actually delete a comment, and with it, the whole thread disappeared. So my blunder will never be seen by anybody else again. But it shows you, just no matter what you're doing. I mean, normally I'm quite careful, and I'm trying to be, you know, as accurate as I possibly can. But sometimes you just make really stupid mistakes, and this is one of those things. And I feel so bad. I just hope that I can in person apologize to Abdullah Samir, because I really did not want to in any way, you know, insinuate that he's an idiot the way that I'm talking about this Al-Andalusi guy. Oh boy. Okay, Pakistani atheist. Oh wow, Pakistani atheist. That's interesting. I hear there's more and more atheists, even though it's really dangerous being an atheist in some of the Muslim countries or Muslim majority countries. But maybe if you leave the country, then this is possible. And that's exactly what I'm observing, that there are more and more people who are leaving Muslim majority countries, and then they are being, I don't know, confronted with the facts, and that's when they start thinking about other possibilities. Have you heard of Alvin Plantinga and his model ontological? Yes, I have. We discussed this when Professor, yes, I just had his name and now I've got a block again. Ahmed, what's his name? I think he's from Oxford University, and I forgot his first name. Anyways, Professor Ahmed, he was on the Jinn&Tonic show, and we discussed Plantinga and his modal ontology argument. Free speech is short supply. Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know why people are so desperate and why they don't simply acknowledge that Islam is weak and we can just carry on. We can just sort of say, okay, we drop all the stupid claims. We condemn slavery. We condemn all the things that are negative, bad, and antisocial in the Quran, and we're just going to be good people. Oh, this reminds me, the goodie in Islam for today is something that I found in Sahih al-Bukhari, book 24, hadith number 6, and it's narrated by Jarir bin Abdullah. I gave the pledge of allegiance to the Prophet for offering prayer perfectly, giving zakat, and giving good advice to every Muslim. I think that's very positive. I think that is something that everybody should be doing. I mean, giving zakat obviously is great. Helping the needy, brilliant, because I maintain as a humanist that a society should be judged by the way that they are treating the weaker ones. And giving good advice, I think, is brilliant in itself. I mean, giving good advice to people, I think, is really precious. But we need to make sure that this really is good advice, that this is not just something, you need to pray to Allah and this is the good advice. I mean, that is not what I'm calling good advice. But anyway, so there's a lot to, to go from this. If you build on this, there's a lot that you can actually expand on and then go into some good advice. Okay, is there anything, have you heard of Okay, you're a plonker. Yeah, it must be. Better than Christian Prince, less humiliated of Abdul's more civility. Sadullah is trying to get apostate prophet deported. Yeah, this is so stupid. It's so funny why people, then have to get personal. And what he did with Thunderfoot, for example, was go to the university and tell the people that he was a racist, that he was against the freedom of speech, and he was against freedom of religion, and none of this was true. But it's very difficult. Arif Ahmed there, thank you, Rafi. That this is something very personal. I don't know why people can't do it. And I've seen a comment now, because Rob just sent me a video of Hamza Tsortzis. He seems to be getting active again in this funny mode of speaking to, LDM used to have this, GDMI era. They used to have all this format of one person speaking to another person, because they will never get an atheist in there. They will never get somebody that they can actually get confronted by. They will always have two of the same ideology talking to each other. And somebody made a, the messenger is much more important than the message. And I thought, excuse me? You've got Hamza Tsortzis, who is, I've demonstrated, I've proven that this guy is a pathological liar. The same is true for Muhammad Hijab, who is sitting opposite this guy. So, Hijab, if somebody says, I will give you 10 pounds if you answer the question, the guy answered the question, he doesn't give him the 10 pounds. What is that? That's a lie. So we've got two guys who really have no clue what science is, yet they always talk about science, have no clue what atheists are. They constantly talk about atheists. And they are now talking about how wonderful Islam is and how important it is to who says it. What is important is what is being said. It's quite a bit. Okay. Iraq, Islam, Zionism, regular geopolitics. I listened to a little bit of Subboor. He tried to argue that he doesn't need to compare arguments with evidence in relation to evolution, so he can know all about and exactly. It's sad, actually. Okay, even Apple and the folks are fully behind censorship now. I don't know why. I don't know why they think that they are actually giving a service to people if they restrict any kind of criticism. I don't know what you want to call it. Now, if I quote the Quran and I say the Quran says, yes, it is allowed under certain circumstances to beat your wife. Now, is that hate speech? Yeah, well, hang on. If that is indeed hate speech, then that means that the Quran is hate speech. So I don't understand. I don't really think that the people who are doing this understand what it is that they are doing. And I don't think that what Apple, what Twitter, what all these social media guys are now doing, that they are actually doing a disservice. And I get very angry with this, because I think that any idea should be able to be challenged. And if it's a good idea, it will support itself. And if it's a bad idea, then we definitely should be allowed to challenge it. Pakistani atheists, the Pakistani government has rounded up and arrested the mullahs who were calling for the death of Asia Bibi. Very small step in the right direction. Wow, I didn't know this. I didn't read about this. Wow, that would indeed be a great step. That would be a huge step if they are really, taking consequences and are really going for the people who did this. I don't know does everybody know Asia Bibi? Does everybody know the story of a woman who just, I don't know, took a sip on a field somewhere from a cup because she's a non-Muslim. The Muslim women objected, and they said, "Why are you doing this?" And she made some comment about Muhammad or something, and they wanted to kill her. And she was actually going to court, and she was about to be prosecuted when the judge at the end of the day said, "No, hang on, what are we doing here? She didn't do anything. And just because you guys are emotionally fired up, that's not a reason to kill somebody." And then the people who were defending this woman were killed, or some of them, not everybody, but some were killed. Now the situation is that Asia Bibi is still in Pakistan, I believe, and she was supposed to go to the UK, but the UK said, "No, we don't want her here, because now if we take her here to the UK and give her asylum, then Muslims in the UK are going to go apeshit, and we're going to have problems with the Muslims here." That's how crazy. This is the crazy world we live in at the moment. And that is why I'm very happy to be part of the Jinn&Tonic show, where we can discuss Islam. And I know, and I have to be realistic. I know that at any date, anybody can come and fabricate something, pay $1,000 to some of these closed user groups on Facebook, and they will come and say, "We are spreading hate speech," and then we are gone. But at the moment, we are still able to critique bad ideas, and we are still able to do that. How long we're able to do that, I don't know. Apparently, Apostle Prophet was part of a Turkish communist terrorist group, so it's possible he committed perjury when immigrating. As a student, I mean, he explains it. I don't have to do this. I don't have to talk for Apostate Prophet. He explains what happened, what part of this is true, what part is not true, and that's it. So anybody who's interested can go and find out what he said about this. I'm stunned someone as nice as Abdullah Samir is being messed up with Facebook. Yeah, this is why I feel so bad, because Abdullah Samir, really, he is one of the most polite, one of the most gentle people we have on Facebook, on YouTube, wherever, on all the social media platforms. And for him to be in any way attacked. That's beyond me, really. Okay, hijab is funny. He didn't know what a condom was. Oh, really? No sound. Don't tell me that. No, come on. No, it's running. Thought Souls lost his voice for a moment there. Oh, did it stop for a while? Oh, shit. Sorry. Pakistan. I think it's just as difficult for Indian Muslims to become atheists as it is in Pakistan. Oh, really? I thought in India it was more secular. Okay. Oh boy. Thunderous, hi. Can you send me a link? Thunderous, can I send you a link? Yes, indeed, I can. How do I do this? Do I have your email? No, I don't have your email here. Shit. Okay, I'll just have to drop it into Messenger. I'll just drop it in here, and I hope that you get it here. Okay, there we go. Oh, there we go. Now I have you here. Because for some odd reason, it was Facebook was stuttering, was blocked. All right. What else do we have? Guest of the community. Okay, brilliant. Let's just go to the comments. Okay, number one. This is a comment on the video that we are looking at the moment, and this is the discussion between SkyDivePhil and Subboor. And what seems to be a most okay, now I'm joining my own show. Oh, brilliant. This is so weird. Okay, hi Thunderous. Am I now here twice? Who am I now?
You are you and I am me.
Well, I'm there twice, so I'm a little bit confused who I am at the moment.
But I don't hear you twice, and you've only got one symbol up. You know, the Jinn&Tonic icon that you have, only one's appeared, though I do see that you're on twice.
I wonder if I close this, if I am going... Okay, if I close... Sorry, guys, then we'll just have to start again. Okay, I rejected myself. Okay. Oh, boy, this is so strange. Welcome to the technology, but I believe that they are stopping Hangouts. They've stopped all fixing whatever, so we'll have to see what happens in the future. Okay, so why do you have to be so desperate, Mr. Phil? Why do you have to be so desperate? This is what we are getting as a comment by a Muslim who thinks that Phil, I don't understand why he is desperate. It doesn't make it any kind of example, doesn't show anything, doesn't give us any kind of constructive criticism. Just why do you have to be so desperate, Mr. Phil? This is the typical thing that I was talking about earlier, that people just go on the person, address the person, but they don't go and address the speech itself. They go for the speaker. Okay, Subboor made atheists unable to speak. Same thing again. Thunderous, I'm just going to mute you because you are clicking. So Subboor made atheists unable to speak. I don't know why and how this is relevant and how he made somebody unable to speak or something. I do not know. Then Old Jamaica X at Phil, time is too short for your brand of dumb. Happy to discuss it sensibly, bud. Bow locks. I don't know why people think that this is a meaningful comment to make there. I mean, either you tell somebody, look, what you said there is dubious or wrong or whatever for this and this reason. Let's have a discussion on this. But to say somebody, you're dumb, and then say discuss it sensibly, that's not a good start. That's not a good way of doing it. And then writing Bolocks also doesn't help. So I don't know why he does that. Okay, and then finally, I'm sure Subboor would be thinking that he won the debate. And this is something that I actually agree with. We see this a lot, that people, regardless of what the outcome is, regardless of how badly they were just burned, they will just go and make this claim and say, nah, that's it. You lost. I don't know why, for what reason.
All right, so...
okay, now, is there anything else that anybody wants to talk about? Thunderous, feel free to unmute yourself. It's just that you were clicking, and then I don't know what this clicking is. That is always coming to the front there.
No, I'm fine with listening to the progress of this discussion, and then if I feel that something needs to be said, I'll just ask you to stop, and then we can comment.
Yeah, okay. And I think in a few minutes, Rob will be here as well. Am I missing anybody else who said no? Okay, I will start this and just, Thunderous, if you could let me know if the sound is coming through.
If you start with methodological naturalism,
yes,
you have to...
The sound is coming through, yes.
For me, it's very soft. I don't know if I can bump this up. No, I can't. I can bump up the microphone, but not the background system noises. Huh. Okay. All right. Then I'm going to keep an eye on the chat a little bit. Yeah, there's gremlins tonight. I don't know why. Because I've normally got a pretty stable connection. So, yeah. Greetings, Doorknob. Yep. Hi. Cut the tongue, shit comments from others. How shocking. Okay. All right. Ready, everybody? Let's go.
That we have some kind of common ancestry with other animals. That's what you said. And that statement is false.
Because you're making a few points, I'm going to have to make take notes.
That's fine.
Sorry.
Notes.
Yeah,
That's
go on.
fine. Okay. So my point was, you said that as long as you're a naturalist, you have to believe that we share common ancestry with other animals. That you have to believe that.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, any comment on this one, that we have to believe that if we are naturalists, we have to believe in common ancestry? I don't understand where he gets this from, but...
I don't quite understand that point about common ancestry, but then you have to bear in mind, so I'm actually somebody who proposes intelligent design. So even though I don't want to, I'm more inclined to what the Muslims got to say as opposed to what.
Really?
So I have no comment to make other than that the Muslim guy is defending this point so badly. I find him to be very verbose and used in almost like a theological and philosophical language and terminology that it's more sort of like wordy and verbose, and it lacks substance. It's almost like he's trying to project himself as some kind of intellectual in himself, as opposed to discuss the material that's at hand.
Okay, yeah, granted. How would you describe naturalism?
I wouldn't know. I'm not even going to take a shot at that one. Naturalism.
Okay.
I think it's one of those words, Stops, that depending on who you speak to determines what interpretation they make of the word. I think there are some words are interpretable and subjective, and I think naturalism is one of those. Hence why I won't make a comment on it.
Okay. Because my understanding of naturalism is that what we observe in nature is based in nature. In other words, all the explanations that we have for what happens in nature is all there is. So it's only nature. Beach can hardly hear him. Who is him? The guy in the video, Phil, or are you talking about Thunderous now? Because I have a problem that I don't know how to bump up the video. Okay, let's see if this...
You've come on again, Stops.
It's me. Good evening.
Oh, hi, Rob.
No, this is not me because Rob came on as Gin&Tonic 2. You should come on as UK instead of like this.
I tried to actually. I tried to log in as Speakers Corner UK, and for some reason it logged me in as Gin&Tonic. Good evening, everybody. Sorry I'm late. Bit of a long working day, much longer than I expected, but good timing by the sounds of it.
Thunderous is still too soft. Now I've jacked him up to maximum. I cannot do any more.
Let's have a little look here. Yeah.
Okay, let's just continue. Let's see, Thunderous, you'll just have to scream at everybody.
Try now, Thunderous. Let's try now.
I will speak louder. Is that any better?
Yeah, there we go. I've jacked you up some more with the Hangouts toolbox.
How can you jack him up more than max?
Because the toolbox does one thing and the control room does another. So there's two different remote volume controls.
Thank you. I never knew. Okay. Yes, I see it now. So what happens if I jack this up as well now?
I don't know.
It's going to be so loud.
You'll be super duper loud. Thunderous, just speak.
Hi. So I'm here. Yeah. Mary had a little lamb and its fleece was white as snow.
Okay, now I made it too loud. I'm going to put you back. Okay, but it's good to know. I've just learned something. Thank you very much. Okay, I'll continue with the video. Okay.
You have to believe. You have to believe.
Oh, by the way, instructions, because I didn't say this in the beginning, that if somebody wants to say something, just type a 1 into the chat, okay? If you want to stop or something, just type a 1 and I will pause the video. Then you have time to enter your question or whatever. And here, of course, Thunderous or Rob just say stop and I'll stop, okay?
Some naturalistic beginning of a human being, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be with common ancestry with other apes, does it?
Yeah,
it
but
doesn't have to have common ancestry with chimps. So
yeah,
you don't have to have any of
but that's
that
the most. But that's the most popular view.
Stop it there. Okay, so the claim is that under naturalism, you are. I missed the first bit, but I think I've seen this before. Under naturalism, the claim that I think he's making is that you must accept Darwinian evolution, and what Phil is saying, and when I looked this up, this is clearly not true, because there are other explanations that a naturalist could accept that is not necessarily Darwinian. So that claim is not true. Now, it's true to say that most people don't adhere to it, but it's not true to say that you must adhere to Darwinism. There are other views out there. Yes, of course, Darwinism's got the overarching evidence, so most people subscribe to that, but it's not true that that's the only mechanism, or as a naturalist, that you must accept that.
Exactly. There's a question in the chat. I think we have common ancestry with single-celled life forms. Does that make me an evolution-promoting extremist? Patrick, I'm sorry. Yep, it does. By the looks of it. If you go to, I don't know, to Pakistan or something and you make that statement, yep, you are going to be considered an extremist. Okay, Thunderous. Now the problem is because you are so high in volume that the clicking is actually going...
But I'm not clicking anything. I'm just sitting there. I'll turn my mic off. And then
just mute it and unmute when you want to say something, because there is some clicking noise going on there. Yeah.
Okay.
The evidence has directed us that way. It wasn't always the most popular view.
Okay, so two points here. So, what would you say about somebody who says that all you need in terms of evidence, all you need in terms of a beginning is just the first sort of spark, the first sort of luck. And from that, you can explain a purely naturalistic story of all human beings basically having a common ancestor, right? What do you think of that idea?
Well, you need to each idea needs to be backed up with evidence.
Sure. Right? Okay, now.
And in terms of human-chimp common ancestry, we have overwhelming evidence for that. We have multiple independent lines of evidence. And let me just
that's all based on the assumption of homology. That's the point I'm making.
No, that's the whole point. You say it's based off the assumption of homology. And that is just completely and utterly false, right? Now, that's not to say that people don't have assumptions of homology, but the evidence the tests, they are not based off an assumption of homology. They are independent of what you start off with your assumptions. You could assume, if you went into that lab and assumed that humans and chimps were not sharing common ancestors,
can I have your glasses?
Can you have my what?
Glasses. I'm going to demonstrate a point.
Okay.
Okay. Do you mind if I wear them? Okay. Let me just wear your glasses for a second. I want you to tell me something, right?
Yeah.
So I'm wearing your glasses right now.
Yeah.
Since I'm wearing your glasses,
Yeah.
am I affected by the lens?
Yeah,
And wherever I go, is this lens going to be all-encompassing in terms of what I see?
Well, it depends what you mean by see. If you mean visually, people use seeing as perception, right?
Yeah.
It just in terms
Which
of
is
what
what
you
it
see.
is.
No, but hearing is perception. You know, touch is perception. So in terms of your visual outlook, of course, it's going through the lens. Yes, of course.
Okay, fine.
Yes.
Good. Now, as a scientist, the point which I'm making is, whatever field you look at, whether you are a biochemist, a geneticist, an anatomist, linguist, evolutionary psychologist, you have the assumption of methodological naturalism and the assumption of homology. And
I'm sorry, this is where I need to stop. This is such nonsense. This is such a typical non sequitur. Putting on glasses and saying, okay, now I've changed my perception, and now I'm looking at methodological naturalism. This is so stupid. This is so ridiculously stupid. He doesn't understand what any of these things are. I don't think he understands what naturalism is. That that you have the philosophical approach and you have the factual approach. Yes, but other than that, there is no real difference in that. You can't say I'm putting on different glasses and now everything changes. I don't understand what he is trying to prove with this point. Yeah, I think it shows, again, his ignorance, and it shows how little he understands of the topic that he is trying to, well, I don't know, refute for some reason.
Well, I think the analogy being made here is, hey, and this is obviously a good example. Don't go down analogous routes. They're very often fallacious, and they go off on a sidetrack. So I think, my understanding is he borrowed the glasses to go, hey, look, I'm looking at it through Phil's naturalistic point of view. There's a few assumptions that he's not saying them specifically, although he does with James. So there's another video after this long exchange in the evening that I was watching with James SC. Unfortunately, he couldn't join us. I tried to send him a message. But there was another one, and he explicitly stated the purpose of this. One of the purposes is to show that methodological naturalism, aka science in his view, cannot account for supernatural things. Therefore, you can't use science. Number two is that you guys have got an unfalsifiable claim. There's nothing that I could bring you that could change your view. And number three, that based on these things, Islam, theism is safe from criticism. This is his underlying, and he doesn't say it here, but he infers it. But he does say almost those words or words to that effect with James. And so obviously what he's doing is going, hey, I'm using this thing, and that's why there's no way that I could disprove. There's nothing I could bring to you. And that's why he was trying to put on the glasses. If he's taking Phil's worldview on, and Phil will not allow anything other than methodological naturalism. But it's just a side point anyway, and it's just, a bit pedantic, so you really shouldn't have given him the glasses, I wouldn't suggest.
The other thing is, no, I've forgotten what the other thing is. I just had a
but the other thing to bring up to him is, well, Subboor, how is it that people who are experts in this field, and you're clearly not one, how is it that experts in this field, like Francis Collins, like Kenneth Miller, and like many, many other Christians, fully accept human-chimp ancestry, fully accept this? How is it that they are also mistaken, and yet they also believe in a creator God? Can you explain that to me? Yeah. And see what their response would be.
The point that I was trying to make is with Darwin. Now, Darwin obviously is important because he started this whole thing by formulating it and writing the book. But the thing is, it's like saying today's cars, we need to consider Daimler. No, we don't. Just because he came up with the first car like 120 years ago doesn't mean that the first car that he came up with 120 years ago still is something that we should be considering today when we are talking about motor cars. So the motor car from 120 years ago is vastly different from the motor cars that we have today. Now, there are some principles, there are some concepts which are still the same, that you have wheels which are being driven by an engine. So that is still the same. And the same is true for Darwin with the concept and with the theory of evolution, which was originally formulated by him, which today is vastly different to what it was in 1859.
Yeah, well, I mean,
is not something you
carry on. Yeah.
put aside and look at the evidence independently, because that's not the way that science works. That's the point I was making.
Okay, can I respond? Right. Okay, so you can't. The whole point is you can test your assumptions, right? You can collect data and see if your assumptions are correct or incorrect. So again, if you look at the genetic data and you say, okay, if evolution is true, nano-P8 must be the youngest of all the pseudogenes. Now that data comes back to you,
Okay,
gives you an answer, and it doesn't depend on what you started with.
Okay, fine.
You'll have to explain how it is. Is it just coincidence that nano-P8 is the youngest pseudogene? Tell me why. Why, if evolution is not true, why is it? Why is it that we share the same mistakes in the same location, and then with the one that we don't have happens to be dated before the split, just like evolution would predict? Tell me how that happened.
Let's do some counterfactuals. Okay, so you understand my point.
Okay. Notice he hasn't responded to this, of course. And again, this
maybe he will now.
Say again.
Maybe he will now.
Yeah, well, he's trying to get a counterfactual. So, but what, he can always do that. But I think here's again where Phil can press him. Hey, I've asked you this question. Can you respond to this? Before you go to counterfactuals, can you respond to how you can explain this? Then we can talk about counterfactuals. But I've asked you a very specific question as to, if these mistakes are in both of, the chimp and the human, and this nano-PA is the youngest, just as evolution predicts, how would you explain that? And if you just say God could do that, I mean, then that's not an explanation. You can just throw that in for anything. That's definitely God of the gaps. And would God really want to, duplicate mistakes in those different creatures? So that's not an explanation. How would you explain that under your worldview? Okay, but carry on. I don't think he's going to answer, but I could be wrong.
Make an assumption that something is going to be there and it is there, or if something's going to be there and it's not there.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a difference to the assumption of homology, and it doesn't make a difference.
You're right. He does not address this one little bit. He goes back onto his script, which he has rehearsed apparently, and he doesn't even understand, I think, what Phil was asking. And his
whole point here, he's on this thing stops, and I can kind of understand it in his worldview. His thing is, you assume homology, you see things out there that confirm homology, you conclude homology. In his view, this is circular. And Phil's point is, you don't need to start with homology. You could say, are we in any way related to any living creature on this planet? And how might we determine that? And then you go out there and you have a look and you go, ooh, we're not, there's certain things that make us, before you even assume homology, but his thing is, it's built in. Because the moment you start assuming that things are related in some way, that's homology. But as Phil has also said, it could be that they're not related. So even whether you start with homology or not, the evidence could disprove this claim. And in fact, we could be more closely related to whales or dolphins or something else. And that's not the case. And this is by the experts around the world. Now, either these experts are all entirely wrong, or perhaps, according to his view, and that would be a good question to ask, is this a big conspiracy theory that everybody just wants to overturn theism because they don't want to have a creationist story? And yet there are other people who are creationists, who are theists, who fully accept this, or they've got their own version, but their own version doesn't include the normal creation event. They presumably think that it all happened at the beginning of the universe, which is in some way a plausible hypothesis. If you go, hey, God lit the spark and he allowed evolution to take place. So these mistakes, that's all part of God's plan, because we're not claiming that he's a perfect creator. We're claiming that he's a creator and he lit the spark and he let things run. But claiming the way he is here, he just doesn't have an explanation. And so we just keep going back, as you say, to the homology thing. And he thinks he's got a circular argument that it's impossible to get out of. And so obviously it's just repeating that over and over again.
Takia, later when you're finished, I want to learn on this topic first.
Cool. Okay. So he'll chat a bit later on.
Okay. Consensus within the field of science is not a guarantee that there aren't any faulty assumptions in the field. Absolutely. But I doubt Subboor is going to revolutionize the field from what I've heard so far. And this is the point. Come on, if anybody has a point, if anybody has any factual arguments that would in any way cast doubt or in any way reduce the validity of the theory, then please go ahead and voice it. But you need to bring your arguments, you need to bring the data, you need to bring the facts, you need to demonstrate it. Simply doing what Subboor is doing here. And I wonder if there are really Muslims who will see that he now is not answering the question.
No, they won't stop.
He is not going to address the fundamental question that is at the heart of this whole debate here. He is not answering this. And I wonder if a Muslim actually realizes that Subboor is running away from the discussion, going back into his little safe corner, and that's it. He will not address the questions which are being asked at the moment. I wonder if there's any Muslim out here who will say, yeah, because what is interesting, there was a Christian who says, okay, I'm not a Muslim, I'm a theist, but I agree that Subboor was on the ropes, and then all he could do is fake it and run away. That there was nothing from an argumentative point of view that he brought up that was valid or that in any way could rattle the theory of evolution.
Yeah, and you're quite right. I just want to read a comment from Detective Inspector Monkfish. And of course, intelligence design, at least they try to do that. We can give them credit for attempting to do that. They put forward, hypothesis and try to prove it with a flagellum and other things like that. And they still obviously try to do that. At least they're attempting to trying to bring evidence. Obviously, it's been rebutted, if not refuted, but they're at least trying to go the scientific route. What I noticed with Subboor in particular is he's been reduced, or he's fallen back onto the philosophical position. That's all they have. Because if you go look at older videos, he's stepped back his position, from what I can tell, quite a bit. Because he never, evolution was always a big challenge in and of itself, and now all he's focused on is human ancestry. So, and he's even said in one debate, I'm sure, that he doesn't even accept intelligent design or normal creation. It was in some way. I have to go and get it. I don't want to misquote it, but I was very surprised about that. But let me just read Detective Inspector Monkfish, who's well versed in this particular topic and with Subboor. Common dissent is assumed because there is such strong evidence for it. To say it is assumed simply means scientists consider it so well established that it can justifiably be taken as given. So there we go.
Yeah, but again, you can't say that it's just an assumption. You can't say that out of the blue somebody assumed that something was going on, and then nothing was ever found that would corroborate this or would substantiate this or would in any form validate it. That is not true. But this is what the implication is from what Subboor is, what he's saying, is that this is just an assumption, and that's it. No, it's not. Number one, there was some data which led to this. And then somebody said, this is the way that you normally work. You then have an hypothesis, and then you build on this, and then you verify this or not. And that is exactly what happened here.
And it's happening today. There are different views out there. And Subboor mentioned, I went to look into it, and Detective Inspector Monkfish has done a much deeper investigation with the third wave. These are guys who fully accept common descent, which is the underlying main part, if I can use that term, I'm not a scientist, main part of evolution, but they believe that there's another mechanism that can explain this. And so they're challenging the Darwinian mechanism, but they still believe that it's a naturalistic thing. But these are people who, so that the mechanism can be challenged, but the time to take them seriously is when the overwhelming evidence that they present is accepted by the overwhelming majority. Because, if somebody presents us evidence, we're not going to be in a position to evaluate it. So if the overwhelming majority of scientists believe it because the evidence points to it, and it can make predictions, as Phil has talked about, and those predictions are shown to be true, that's very strong evidence in favor of that.
And Simon James, you obviously have not seen and watched my video I published a few days ago. When mankind leaves our planet for another planet, please don't take any Muslims. They can't. Muslims are not allowed to leave this planet without the okay of Allah. And how do you contact? Do you have an email address? Do you have I don't know, do you have him on speed dial, or how do you get the okay from Allah that you are allowed to leave the planet? You have to. That's what it says in the Quran.
Thunderous, I think, wants to join us. Go through it.
I was just going to make some sarcastic comment that if you wanted to go see Allah, you'd have to go get on the Barak and fly through the 7 heavens. And hopefully one of the prophets, when you knock on the door, will let you in.
How long does it take, by the way? How quick can he? Is there sort of a time frame for how long it takes?
Well, he went in an evening, didn't he?
Did he go through all 7 heavens though in the evening?
Yeah,
yeah.
Is it Muhammad's time? Oh, it was such a good time it is. And then he saw Abraham, then he saw
yes, I remember
Moses and Jesus.
I just wasn't sure if he went through all 7, like as in, or did he go from like heaven straight to the 7th? From Earth to straight to the 7th heaven, or did he actually pass through all 7?
Pass through all 7.
It's the longest hadith of them all. And it's been, shown in great detail because they repeat every single time that he knocks on the door. Who is there? Well, it is Muhammad. Is he a righteous? Yes, he is righteous. Well, then I will let him in. Then he says hi to Jesus. Then he goes to the next one. Is he righteous? Yes. Should I let him in? Yes. Why should I do? Well, because he's a believer. And every single time they repeat the whole full story. They don't say the same procedure happens again. No. They repeat the whole thing. It's quite strange.
All right, we're going off on a tangent, but that's interesting. Let's find that deep
overall epistemic weighing of human chimpanzee history. That's the point I was making. I'll give you some evidence for this. Okay. So, we and chimps are supposed to have a recent common ancestor. So, why is it that if somebody was to use the assumption of homology and then go ahead, why is it that the closest to us in human behavior is not actually the chimpanzee, is actually the ant? Ants have warfare, ants have economics, ants have actually
chimps also have warfare.
Hang on one second. Let me finish this point. Sociologically, according to evolutionary biologists, the closest thing to human beings is actually the ant. And there's a book on this, E.O. Wilson's The Social Conquest of the Earth, right? And there's other atheist evolutionary biologists who've admitted the closest to the human being in terms of our social capabilities is the ant. The closest to human beings in terms of our intellectual capabilities is actually the crow, right? Now,
I can't get over this, really. This guy is so fucking stupid. How is it providing evidence that he is asking a question, shifting now the burden of proof onto Phil, saying he has to now explain why some aspects of other animals are similar to human behavior, when there is no way that you can get any animal which is closer to a human than a chimpanzee if you're looking at the whole, the whole variety of behavioral patterns that we have.
Yeah, that was my thought.
Taking one specific one out now and saying, explain to me why ants are doing the same. Explain why crows are doing the same. That is so stupid. That is so unbelievably, ridiculously ridiculous. It's so stupid. I can't believe it. Well,
that was a sort of thought that struck me, was this is cherry picking a couple of potential, and we can say potential at this stage, similarities, but they're not physical similarities in any way. So he said they're social, and Phil will come back and say that monkeys do X, Y, and Z, and so forth. But that's just cherry picking one sort of social thing. But there's many other animals that also do that. So who's to what? And again, I haven't read the book, and I suspect he hasn't either. He's just quoting a book, which is sort of more his style. But what is the evidence that ants are the closest in social? And let's be charitable and assume they were the closest. What is that supposed to say? And in his view, that's counterfactual evidence, because that goes against the claim of homology, that similarities. And I think normally, my understanding, and I'm definitely not an expert, so I'm pleased in the comments, correct me if I'm wrong. Normally, please, Detective Monkfish in particular, is homology not primarily focused on similarities within the structure of the organism, as opposed to its social behavior and makeup? I could be wrong, but that seems to me that the main claim about homology, not the social thing, because you can, that's much more difficult to do, isn't it? You can look at ants, you could look at chimps, you could look at other animals and say, oh, well, this one does slightly better than that one. And it seems to me, A, that's cherry picking, and B, I don't know how you could prove that to be the case. How do you know that they are more social than chimps? Does it take longer? Is there more of them? You know, what sort of thing are you going to do to claim that they have, you know, more of a social, they're closer to us in some way in their social behavior? It seems cherry picking to me.
And I like the comments. Ants are just like us; they can talk.
Yes. If you believe the Quran, they can talk. Well, that would make them closer in communication. I grant that. If they could in fact talk English or Arabic or whatever, and no other animal that we're aware of can do that, then yes, you would have an argument that. But again, that's just cherry picking one thing. That wouldn't necessarily mean that they're closest related to us.
I like Dawn Lobhead with the arrow pointing ape. Yes, I too. I am a type of an ape, and every human being is a type of an ape. I mean, that's okay. Now I'm spouting hate speech, right, by saying that we are all types of an ape.
Well, we all come from that sort of lineage, don't we? A common ancestor. Okay, we're split off. I mean, we are like you say, a type. I mean, again, we'd have to
That's
ask
hate speech.
Aaron Ra what that is, and somebody could type it in immediately what the biological term for us is. But yeah. All right, let's carry on. Otherwise, we'll never get done.
Those observations which go against the sort of a priori sort of, before looking at the evidence, if someone was to assume if homology is true, then this would be true. Those haven't changed at all the epistemic weighing of human chimp ancestry, those dissimilarities. Why haven't they? Because the assumption that you begin with is always going to remain an assumption, and the similarities that you see, you're going to say are due to common ancestry. The dissimilarities you're going to say are due to homoplasy. There is no piece of evidence that can undermine that.
Okay, all right. So first off, the statement that humans and ants are the most similar.
Sociological.
All you said was that because they have. Let me just see. What was the evidence for that? They have warfare.
Okay, let me give you some.
So one at a time. One at a time. One was warfare, correct?
Okay,
correct. And chimps also have warfare. So that seems like pretty weak evidence to me. What was the next one?
Okay, one second. So let me explain how sociology works. I think you've made a misrepresentation. Of course, they both have warfare.
Right.
Except in ant colonies, and this isn't according to me, this is according to the evolutionary biologists who study this. In ant colonies, you have massive warfare where millions of ants go out and they fight. And not only do they go out and fight, you actually have ants which go out and apply medicine to the ants which are actually injured. Now, the complex level of warfare that ants have is totally different to human to chimp warfare. Now, when it comes to human and chimp being similar in terms of their sociological behavior, and humans and ants actually being closer than humans and chimps, this is not something I've said. This is something evolutionary biologists have come to the conclusion of. And of course, those conclusions can be revised based on new data, but that's the conclusion that they've actually come to. Now,
so, stop it there again. So I'll accept that because it suits my argument. But of course, science is always changing, so we shouldn't take anything as absolute fact. But I'll jump on this because some, and maybe one or two probably, we'd have to look this up, and maybe Detective Inspector Monkfish or somebody else can tell us, you know, how many so-called biologists accept this claim that ants are the closest in their warfare and so forth. But you know, so again, this is the other thing. Why even go along? Why even claim science? And of course, he wants to get away from science because that's, you know, the biggest problem that Islam has is science. I mean, it's just devastating. So if they can somehow sidestep science, but then I'll appeal to it when it suits me, and then but also in the same breath say that it could change. So, you know, why are you doing that? Carry on.
And Rob, I think we need to appreciate we're never going to go through the whole video.
No.
I mean, it gets repetitive after a while too. So
all right, so maybe we make a thing now. If the thing is repeated, if we've talked about it before, it's come up before, then we just carry on. So it may be that there'll be quite a long spell. I don't know how long the video still is, but also to the audience, then we may not get through between stops, and I will get to a point where. And Thunderous, jump in whenever you fancy. We get to a point where we go, okay, we've heard enough of this now. I think maybe we'll jump towards the last half an hour if we can at some point, because it got a little bit more heated there, and there was also accusations of full, running away and so forth, even though he did say clearly in the video that he had to go at a certain time, and Subboor was late for their meeting. They agreed to meet at a certain time, and Subboor was late. So we may jump at some point, and the only reason to do that is otherwise we'd be here all night.
Yeah, because we are on half an hour of 2. So
yeah.
Atheist evolutionary biologist.
He's not an atheist. You're wrong.
He is an atheist.
No, he isn't. I've got your quote from you.
He's always doing this.
You're wrong.
He is an atheist evolutionary biologist. He's based here. Okay, we can deal with whether he's an atheist or not later. Okay. Let's deal with his point.
No, this is what I hate about the way that Subboor argues, that he just makes claims which are totally wrong, and then, I am wrong. Okay, then let's deal with this later. No, you don't go and make these stupid assumptions, these stupid claims, if you know full well that they are wrong. And this is what I hate, and he does it all the time. Everybody is an atheist if they say something he doesn't like.
His point here is this. Yeah. In his book, An Accidental Species, talking about us, he writes in that book that humans and ants are the closest sociologically. And he's the senior editor of Nature.
No, he isn't.
Who cares?
He's not the senior editor of Nature?
No.
Henry Gee?
Correct.
Okay.
I'll tell you why. Because Nature doesn't have a senior editor. It has a whole bunch of senior editors. Okay? And you're misquoting him. Let me give you a quote from Henry Gee. Okay?
Wait, hang on a second. Okay. What about the point I just made?
Okay, I'll respond. Let me respond. Okay, let me respond. Okay, first
you've been jumping around a lot.
Okay, well, so are you. Right. Okay.
I refuse your points and jump on. You jump on without me.
Stop there again.
Now wear your glasses again, because until you show me homology, until
let me respond. Let me respond. You can wear it. Right. Okay. Okay.
So these are the assumptions of homology, and once he shows me that scientists don't have this assumption, I'll take them off.
Okay, first off,
I want to go home.
Okay, all right. Okay, first off,
I don't need help.
So first off, Subboor's wrong about Henry Gee being an atheist.
Henry
Gee, sorry. This is
by the way, stop there for a moment again. Just a quick point. Detective Inspector Monkfish looked this up, and it is G actually. It's pronounced Jee. I didn't know that. I also pronounced the Gee. So both me and Subboor were wrong. He pronounces it as G. With looking like or spelling like, sounding like Jee, G. So Phil was correct. I've always pronounced it as Gee as well, but it's G apparently. So there you go.
I am with the scientists of an earlier age who found that their motivation in advancing the cause of knowledge was to magnify the name of the Creator. Okay, so that was in Nature. That was his own words, right? He also says, right. He never disputes that humans and chimps share a common ancestor. He agrees with that.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
I know.
Right, and he also agrees that the fossil evidence supports evolution. Agreed?
Based on the assumption of homology.
No, it's not based on the assumption of homology. It is based off of the evidence that we actually have.
Can I see
Let's just go. Hang on.
Can I see that quote?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. You can. There's the source.
Oh boy.
Check it.
It's just filibustering. Hey, I'll just waste time now because I've been refuted, and instead of conceding that point.
No, agreed. It was 1 point at a time, right? 1 point.
In another place, he said he's an atheist.
That's what I have.
And that is not clear. That's not clear.
Give me your quote that says he's an atheist.
Well, I don't have it with me right now.
Well,
but listen,
that is why.
Well, you want me to memorize every single person?
Yes, exactly. That's what you do. You don't make claims you can't substantiate.
Was that we would swap our statements ahead of time, because then we can check who's misquoting and who's not misquoting.
But him being an atheist.
You didn't want to do that.
Wait, hang on a second.
You didn't want to do that because you said it was boring.
Wait, hang on. Well, Phil, look. Whether Henry Gee is an atheist or he's not an atheist, how on earth does that change our conversation?
Because it just stop it. It changes the conversation because it shows once again that you are dishonest and disingenuous, and you don't concede a point when it's shown to you that the evidence is the opposite. That's how it changes the conversation. And every time Phil brings up just one of these little points, it just shows again that you don't concede. Hey, do you know what? I could be wrong. I'm going to go back and look at that, and I won't mention that Henry Gee is an atheist again until I've got concrete evidence of it. And the fact that you've given me other evidence, I'll go back and confirm that. but not once do we ever hear a point that's been conceded. Because remember what this is, again, I'm going to just make it for those who are not listening. This is not for us or Phil or anybody that's thinking critically that's a non-Muslim. This is for the Muslim brothers and sisters who are watching that will believe anything that comes out of his mouth. And as long as he can sidestep the point that because they're not paying attention or they don't understand what's going on here, then it looks like their man is winning. I mean, the number of comments that just said that this guy, you know, TransPhil here, that just shows how completely hypnotized people are. Off we go.
And then, unfortunately, Phil is too polite. He doesn't say, okay, you said that he's an atheist. Can you repeat this now? No, you cannot. So are you going to go back on your word and say he is not an atheist? And this is where it shows Subboor will not do that. This is how dishonest he really is. And this is what I would capitalize on and show people. It's exactly what Rob is saying, because the audience are other Muslims. And this is where you need to show, listen, this is the false tactics here, the deception that is being played.
Next point, right? The point is,
You need to address these glasses.
Okay, Henry Gee, right, agrees that humans and chimps share a common ancestor. He agrees that the fossil
Based on homology.
No, where does he say it's based off homology? He says it's based off of the evidence.
If you look at,
I'm gonna blow my gasket just now, because there's some asshole here called M Stagzerg.
Yeah, no, I've watched it. Carry on, Stops. I've just responded to him. The reason
why don't you debate him then?
Well, the reason I've just put it in there, because of his dishonesty, we just demonstrated again. M-Stacks, if I kept coming to you and saying that, no, Muhammad was Jesus in disguise, and you showed me some evidence that, in fact, Muhammad was not Jesus, and I kept saying to you, no, Muhammad is Jesus, would you want to have another conversation with me? I would clearly have been shown to be intellectually dishonest. I wouldn't concede my point. Would there be any point in having a discussion? I think the question answers itself. Let's carry on.
This is what gets me so angry.
Henry Gee and all of evolutionary biologists, including philosophers of biology, they all have said the same thing, which is that we have the assumption of homology in our field. And this isn't just about one guy said this or another guy said this. Look, I want you to tell me something, right? If there is a book which is published by, say, a reputable publisher, which has an atheist philosopher of science or an atheist evolutionary biologist who says a particular thing, and then you come here and you say something else different, then should I go with what I have in front of me, or should I go with what you have?
You should go with the evidence. That's what you should.
And the evidence is that when
this is a quote from Henry Gee. Let me read it out to you, okay? They had the 150th anniversary of the publication of The Origin of Species, and Henry Gee organized, or he wrote this about, they had this thing to celebrate that in Nature, okay? And this is what Henry Gee said. The articles in this insight testify to the success of Charles Darwin's theory of descent with modification by means of natural selection, carefully detailed in his book On the Origin of Species almost 8 years ago. Its simplicity. Given heritable variation, the superabundance of offspring, and environmental change, natural selection must happen and evolution will follow. So he says the assumptions are genetic heritability and variation, superabundance of offspring, and environmental change. That's it. That's the three things that he says. He never says based off the assumption of homology. So he says based off those three assumptions.
Wait, hang on a second.
And also he says this. Let me give you one more quote from Henry Gee. Darwin would have been safe. Okay, hang on. Darwin would have been safe had no fossils ever been discovered. It remains the case, however, that fossils provide direct evidence of evolutionary change in our past.
Okay? So where does it say he doesn't have the assumption of homology?
Come on, let's carry on. Yeah, just carry on, Stops. He's going to just keep saying that. This is the go-to thing every single time, isn't it? And I don't have a response to anything you're saying. I'm just going to say, how's that disprove homology? How does that disprove homology? It's like a broken record.
Well, where does it? Where he says that natural selection, evolution follows from three things: heritable variation, selection, superabundance of offspring, and environmental change.
Okay, now what you've done is you've actually committed a fallacy. You've committed the fallacy of equivocation. We are speaking about homology, and he's speaking about natural selection. Now, homology is a necessary condition for human-chimp ancestry to be true, but it's not a sufficient condition. For it to be sufficient, you need a mechanism. And a mechanism, in terms of science, can never be proven because of the inductive nature of science. Now, what you've done there is you've said, he is assuming these things, but those are the assumptions of natural selection. Now, Henry Gee and any other evolutionary biologist in the world, they do actually believe in the assumption of homology, and they also, prior to that, have the assumption of methodological naturalism. Now, Elliot Sober, who is an atheist, again, evolutionary biologist, if you don't dispute he's an atheist, we can deal with that too. He's an atheist evolutionary biologist. In his book, Evidence and Evolution, which is published by by Cambridge University, he says, the idea that humans and chimps must share a common ancestor because they're so similar, and humans and mushrooms must have independent ancestry because they're so different, they're both naive. Because within a probabilistic framework, there is no must. And he goes on in that same very book, speaking about homology, homoplasy, and the ad hoc rationalizations which do actually exist in the field of evolutionary biology.
You're wait,
hang on one second. So what I want you to do is this. I want you to show me that scientists don't begin off with the assumption of homology. Don't take a word of a scientist out of context. I want you to show me as a field they don't begin off with the assumption of homology. And two, I want you to show me how it's possible to have a conversation about homology without speaking about the mechanism. Because if you can show all the similarities between humans and chimps, humans and pigs, humans and whatever, if there is no mechanism of transformation, all you have is a story. Which is why, and this is the last point I'm going to make, you can try and refute all these points, human-chimp ancestry was something which the ancient Greeks believed in, the ancient Hindus believed in, the Enlightenment Victorian thinkers also believed in, including Darwin and his grandfather. The reason why this idea took off is because Darwin gave a mechanism, the mechanism of natural selection. If the mechanism breaks, or if the mechanism is shown to be insufficient, you cannot claim human-chimp ancestry is true. Okay.
Stop it there for a moment. Hopefully, Detective Inspector Monkfish has got that claim as well, because I thought he said originally that natural selection requires homology as an assumption. I could be mistaken. I thought that's what he said, about 5 minutes ago. But
that's what I heard as well.
Okay, so that's what
it needs homology, which is, no.
But Detective Inspector Monkfish has also got some quotes about this claim that he's just made here. If there isn't a mechanism, if we don't know the mechanism, then human-chimp ancestry cannot be demonstrated. And I'm pretty sure that Detective Inspector Monkfish, he's been literally debunking this for 1.5 years, brought forward quotes from about 12 or 15 philosophers of biology, or in biology. I apologize if that's not the correct terminology, that say that that if natural selection was shown not to be the correct mechanism, that wouldn't undermine common descent. In other words, for those who are watching, the common descent itself is not reliant on natural selection, as far as I go, and I could be mistaken. So, Det, if you just tell me, I have 50 quotes who strongly disagree with him. Okay, so Detective Inspector Monkfish has 50 quotes. So again, this is cherry picking. And here's the other thing, by the way, if you notice what happens here, he will make a bunch of assertions, supposedly claiming that he's reading these from the books, and then Phil has to refute him. These are assertions. These are not, that he hasn't brought evidence. When he quotes a book, he thinks that this is somehow evidence, that he's made an argument, he's made an assertion, and then the burden of proof is now for Phil to disprove his assertion, instead of saying, provide me the evidence of your assertion, because at the moment I don't believe you. My default position is I do not believe a word you say. So please provide me the evidence. I'm not going to go and refute something, your assertion, without you first providing evidence that it's true.
Exactly. This is the point. I think people don't realize that whatever point Subboor brings up, it is being refuted. On top of which, every claim that he makes is either false or is a blatant lie. And this is what people don't understand for somebody like the Stacks idiot. He's saying, well, come on, he hasn't been refuted. Yes, he has. Every single point has been refuted. And on top of that, he's been shown to be a liar because he knows that this guy is not an atheist. He just calls everybody an atheist for effect. Because it doesn't matter whether somebody is a biologist and then on top of that also an atheist, whether he has a God belief or not. It doesn't matter.
No, it's true that it doesn't matter. But the reason I think that he does that, Phil, I'm saying Phil, I think you're Phil there, stops, is because what the inference is, hey, your fellow atheists are saying this, so are you disagreeing with them? That's the point. Because if it's a theist, then we'd in his view, we'd automatically disagree with them. But hey, I'm presenting you with atheists. So it's like, hey, it's not just me, Subboor. I've got all these invisible atheists standing behind me. Are you going to say that they're all wrong as well? And hey, they're on your side, but they're saying the opposite of yours. So the word atheist has some inferences in there that are built in that he thinks makes the argument stronger. But like you say, whether the scientist is a Christian or something else, we care about the evidence that the scientist brings. Now, it is true that some scientists, not all, clearly, because people like Kenneth Miller and Francis Collins care about the science and they're Christians, but it is true that there are some Christian scientists who start with a book and try and work backwards, like the Noah's Ark scientists working at, 10 times Noah's Ark. So they start backwards and they try to work towards something. But honest Christian scientists, when I say Christian scientists who are Christian, put their Christianity to one side and they work on the science. So, it doesn't matter what scientist you are. We care about the evidence that is being presented.
That's the point.
Without the mechanism, it's like you have a bridge and you have two foundations. The foundations break and you want to cross the bridge. You cannot. Darwin's theory is not a theory about similarity. It's a similarity. It's a theory about natural selection leading A to Z.
Okay. All right, so what Subboor did was totally and utterly misquote Elliot Sober. Okay, so what he said was true, that Elliot Sober says you can't just look at similarities and then derive common ancestry. That's naive, and I agree with that. I agree with that right from the start, right? But what Elliot Sober goes on to say, what he goes on to say was, and this is a direct quote, you can look this up in that very book, the torpedo shape found in sharks and dolphins does not provide strong evidence for their having common ancestor. Natural selection favors this shape in large aquatic predators, so we'd expect it to be present in modern sharks and dolphins, regardless of whether they have a common ancestor. In contrast, the gill slits found on human embryos and in many fish are evidence of a common ancestor, precisely because they have no adaptive utility in human embryos. The term vestigial carries the double meaning that Darwin intended. Vestigial traits are useless to the organism and they are vestiges of a bygone age. By recognizing they are useless, we see they provide substantial information about the past. Now, this is the point. It's true that you can't just look at similarities and then say, right, that's down to common ancestry. That's homology. You have to do things that are more sophisticated than that. Let me give you another piece of evidence to show you how this is done, okay? So let me go back to my little presentation here, okay? So let's go to something called amino acid functional redundancy.
No. You can see Phil came prepared, and I know Phil, and we've chatted, and he's chatted to Detective Inspector Monkfish and others. He does his homework. Obviously you're not going to be able to refute every single assertion that somebody made, but you can see he came there and he'd done his homework. He knew, what he knows about what he's talking about, but he's got the evidence as well, because obviously these claims have been made by Subboor for years, and so they're easy to look up. Now, virtually no Muslim will look them up, but the rest of us, or in this particular case, was Phil and Detective Inspector Monkfish, both of whom I trust. I can go look it up myself, but I just do double work when these guys have done it already, and they are, incredibly honest and meticulous with their work. And so he'd done his homework here. But the point on that one was that, hey, we've got these gill slits, and that has no value to us, in a human embryo. The fact that they've got, the noses is what you would expect in larger fish in water. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're related. So and again, this may go over some people's heads, and I'm not an expert, but at least I understand that particular point as well. And notice, of course, what Phil could have done here again is stop at that point and go, okay, what is your explanation for this? And hold his feet to the fire. His feet was never ready. He did it on a couple of occasions, but Subboor was able to skirt this around. What you have to do here is not allow him to say anything else but to answer that question. Anything else is a skirt around, red herring, straw man, just a deflection. And that's the difficult part, is to hold him, because you can just bring up some term that makes him sound smart, and all the gullible and hypnotized Muslims will go, wow, he made a point and you didn't refute it. He didn't answer the question. He just brought up some scientific or philosophical term so as he doesn't have to answer the question.
And the other thing is, what Phil unfortunately does not point out is that he has shown once again that Subboor does not understand his own quotes.
Yes. He's not read these books. I'm pretty sure he hasn't read these books. And so he's quoting a book. He's probably picked up these quotes from a creationist website. So he's never actually read the book cover to cover. Or if he has, as you quite rightly say, if he came across that paragraph, he didn't understand it at all and just went on, because that would have stopped you in your tracks and go, whoa, hang on a moment. I've just read something here and he said that. Let me go and find out what's going on here. But of course, none of that happens.
For you to make a point and move on.
No, but it's important.
No. Wait. That's a separate point.
Hang on.
Listen. I'm here all day. Let's deal with that point. How does that undermine?
I'm not here all day.
Well, I am.
Okay,
so how does that undermine the point which I made about him?
Because you misquoted Elliot Sober. What you misquoted him, because what Elliot Sober said was you can't just look at similarities and then say, okay, that's down to common ancestry. And I agree with that. But what he said afterwards was that if you look at similarities in functional things, that might be down to common ancestry, might not be. But if you look at similarities in non-functional things, then you can conclude common ancestry. That's what Elliot Sober says. Elliot Sober is very clear. You can conclude common ancestry.
Hang on.
And you're quoting him to say that you can't.
It's a really strange situation where somebody says you are misquoting this person, and then when they are explaining how you're misquoting that person, they misquote them themselves.
How did I misquote?
Here's exactly what Elliot Sober said. He said, the idea that humans and chimpanzees have a common ancestor, the idea that they must have a common ancestor because they're so similar, and the idea that humans and mushrooms must have independent ancestry because they're so different, both of these are naive because they are based on a probabilistic framework, and within a probabilistic framework, there is no must in either case. He is describing homology as an assumption, and that assumption of homology fits into a probabilistic framework, which also has other assumptions, such as a mechanism of natural selection, which also has other assumptions, such as gradualism and vertical gene transfer, and so on and so on. So what I said there, he did not undermine, but what he's describing later.
PID.
Elliot Sober, what he's basically saying is that you cannot claim human-chimp ancestry is true, literally is a must, because it's still based on a probabilistic framework, which is exactly what I was saying.
Okay, let me respond, right? What Sober is saying is that you can't just look at the similarities and conclude common ancestry. I totally agree with that. No one is doing that. Let me show you how we do this, okay? Here's another piece of evidence, okay? This is called amino acid functional redundancy. So if you look at...
Okay, it's going to the level now where he's saying, well, he doesn't say all doors must be round. Well, who says that he says all doors must be round? This is the whole point.
Nobody claimed that it's... But the probabilistic, and I think, did we do it earlier or was it coming up later? When Phil gives him a probabilistic thing of 1 billion to 1, he doesn't accept that. So if the probabilities is 1 billion to 1, that this is the case, and I'm sure it comes up later on, at what point is probabilistic framework enough to be accepted as, quote, a fact? Not an absolute fact, whatever the hell that's supposed to be, but a fact. At what point do we accept something as a fact of the natural world? And again, maybe in his world, only absolute facts like mathematics. Well, that's great. That just undermines your point as a theist then. You can't claim anything then that's absolute, especially not the Quran.
Should I jump to 1.5 hours?
You're getting tired. Okay, yeah. We can go forward. What time frame are you at? What time frame were you at there? Just in case people want to know.
Oh shit! This was like 45 minutes.
45 minutes.
No,
Okay.
35 minutes.
30. We're only at 35.
Let me answer. Yeah? The book is Science and Human Origins. This is written by. These are Christian.
This is a book.
Yes.
Well, no, we want a scientific paper, or not.
Wait, hang on.
Anyone can publish anything in a book.
Phil,
That's
Phil,
not peer
Phil,
review.
Phil, Phil.
I want something in a
Phil.
proper journal.
Phil,
Exactly.
1 second. Phil, 1 second. 1 second.
Sorry, that's irrelevant.
I'm not dealing with this point. I'm dealing with the earlier point of the Italian ape.
Yeah, I want a reference in a proper peer review journal.
What, the existence of this ape?
And that it was in Italy, and that it's 10 million years old, and that it's bipedal. And I want it in a proper peer review journal, not in a book.
Oh, I think this is the thing that Phil actually reads himself, and it doesn't say what Subboor says.
Then after you actually go to the page. Right, carry on.
You need. Right, you can't find it. No surprise.
Well, wait, hang on a second. If I did find it, or if I didn't actually find it, it wouldn't make a difference to my overall argument, which I'm actually making, and which you've admitted, that if there is this Italian ape, which is 10 million years old, which is fully bipedal, this is a recalcitrant fact. But this does not, and this reconfirms something I said earlier, this does not falsify human chimpanzee history, because nothing can.
Okay, he says nothing can falsify human chimpanzee history.
Because of methodological naturalism and homology.
Okay, all right, let me just address that point, right? First off, as we established, it's nothing to do with methodological naturalism, because we could have a perfectly naturalistic explanation for human origins that's nothing to do with evolution. You could be someone that believes in spontaneous creation, and people were. Aristotle believes in spontaneous creation. Many other ancient Greeks, I think it was Anaxagoras, believed in it. Okay, so it's nothing from naturalism that says that humans and chimps have to share a common ancestor. And human and chimps' common ancestry is falsifiable. Of course, any one piece of evidence, has to be taken in the context of all the evidence, right? So it's true that you have to look at all the evidence. Okay, multiple lines of evidence. If you just found one thing, of course, you have to look at the broad picture. Okay. Now,
I'm doing call a friend.
Okay, fine. Yeah, I mean,
wait.
I need to give you this reference first.
Okay.
Well, the ape was in Africa, I believe,
All right,
17 million years ago.
Point
so
is,
it happened
if
before.
it were the case that we found that, going back to my original example,
Samro, how
that
you doing? Bro, I need a quick favor.
Hello. The nano P8 pseudogene
You know that
is
Italian
the oldest of
we
the
were speaking
pseudogenes,
about, which was discovered in
that
southern
would
Italy.
be falsified
What was it
human
called?
evolution, right? If we found that humans and chimps,
Which was fully bipedal.
their amino acid sequence,
Can you WhatsApp me the name and just WhatsApp me where they like some reference where they
that
discovered
would
it?
falsify evolution. If that graph,
I need an ASAP kind of debating an atheist right now.
if that graph didn't have that pattern,
Debating
that would
an
go
atheist.
against human evolution, right?
Okay, Phil.
Let me give you another test, right? If humans and chimps share a common ancestor, right, then what we should find is that the genetic diversity in human populations should be highest at the center of origin. This is called Vavilov's theorem. This is widely accepted in genetics. The origin center is where you have the highest genetic diversity. So if we found, what we could look at different ethnicities, Europeans, Eskimos, Native Americans, Aboriginals, whoever. And if evolution is true, sub-Saharan Africans should have the highest genetic diversity. If it turned out that Eskimos had the highest genetic diversity, that would be evidence against human-chimp common ancestry. That would be evidence against human.
Wait.
Right?
Wait. Hang on.
Now,
That's a non sequitur. That's a total non sequitur. You're assuming, and this is a very racist thing, by the way, that East Africa is where you have the great apes, and that's where the black people are.
No,
so
that's where you have the fossil.
Wait, hang on.
It's not racist at all.
It is racist, and I'll tell you why.
How is it racist?
I'll tell you why. Because you actually have fossils which are also in other parts of Asia, such as China, which could also be interpreted as the beginning of human beings. Now, your argument is a non sequitur. Okay.
The oldest hominid fossils are all in East
You made your
Africa.
point. You made your
They're
point.
all in Sub-Saharan Africa, and that's where then we should find the highest genetic diversity.
The oldest fossil of recently that discovered of a human being is actually in Morocco.
of
Africa.
a human being,
Yes.
that's not what we're talking about.
Yes.
We're talking about the oldest hominid fossils, where Australopithecus is,
Yes.
where Orinid is,
yes,
where all these, nothing to do with
no,
where
but you're
the
assuming,
oldest modern human is. That's just ridiculous.
You're assuming those are human ancestors.
Well, no,
Oh,
if they are, if
please.
that's where human ancestry is, then we can confirm it with another piece of evidence. That's the point. This is what you completely misunderstand every time.
So
you say, oh, we're just assuming this, we're just assuming this, we're just assuming this.
Okay.
But the whole point is the data can confirm or deny the assumptions.
Wait, hang on.
And the data overwhelmingly confirms it.
Okay,
this is the whole point.
Phil, here's the thing. The fossils which are found in East Africa, those fossils, none of them, and here's the point which I'm making, have been proven to be human ancestors. Those fossils. Wait, hang on a second. Every single one of those fossils that's been discovered, those discoveries are based on the assumption of homology, and the assumption which is actually made. And here's the point. Here's the point. I'm going to make an argument. No. Sir, I'm doing one person at a time. I'll speak to you next. Lucy is assumed to be a human chimp ancestor. Is supposed to be our recent sort of, if you like, grandmother, because she was discovered in Africa, and she was supposed to be bipedal. Now, I want you to.
Evidence says it.
Wait, hang on. Why didn't researchers use the ape which is discovered in southern Italy, which is 10 million years old, 7 million years older, as a human chimp ancestor?
You keep quoting this
because
you haven't given a reference for it.
Okay, wait, it's coming. I actually rang a friend for it.
I know, but
I work.
Christmas
with
is also
researchers.
coming.
Oh wait, it just came in. Good timing.
Phil's going to look this up, by the way, now, and this is going to be amusing.
Bambuli, and here it is. Journal of Human Evolution. So the point which I was making stands. If you look at any fossil,
look at it.
That fossil, you're using that fossil and you're basing it on an assumption of homology, and you're saying that this is a human chimp ancestor. But that assumption is not reconfirmed by you looking at similarities. Because that argument would be like this. That would be like, similarities are due to common descent. Similarities exist, therefore similarities are due to common descent. But that would actually be circular reasoning. Why didn't these researchers use the ape?
Have you got back to the beginning of the video?
The fully bipedal.
No, it sounds so
familiar.
familiar.
Because Darwin and the people prior to him, they were actually racist, and they wanted to show that the black person is much closer to the other primates than the Caucasian people. So they didn't use the ape in southern Italy, which is 10 million years old, fully bipedal. Rather, they used an ape which was 3.
I wonder if he says it's fully bipedal. Who made that assumption? How did they find out that it was fully bipedal? Doesn't he?
Well, you can actually do it through the interesting thing that I saw is that you can actually do it if you have certain of the fossil parts, particularly the back of
the hip bones, of course, the whole pelvic area, the whole everything. That's exactly the evidence that you need to come to the conclusion that this is bipedal. But he says it's an assumption. So what he is now doing is he's saying your assumption is wrong. My assumption is correct because it's an assumption which shows it's fully bipedal. But he doesn't say how he gets to the conclusion that it's fully bipedal. So it must be an assumption that he's just said is unreliable.
Years old. 1 second. 3 million years old, which was in southern Africa. And here's the point. When
you're talking about
theory is true, anything is evidence. Darwin believed, and he said this in The Descent of Man, that African people, they actually, some of them, they have feet which are like this, which actually have opposable thumbs, which is why black people are good at climbing trees. Now, any black people here, sir, do you have any relatives in Africa who have feet?
let's go off on a tangent here. Let's go and show that Darwin was racist, because somehow that'll undermine the claims that Darwin made
exactly
150 years ago that we've improved upon. Some things he was wrong about, some things he was correct about. But let's go and poison the well and smear his name. Let's assume he was the biggest racist. He was the first part of the Ku Klux Klan. Does that mean that his claims were false? And can we falsify it or confirm it with data we have today? Complete and utter red herring.
Okay, you were not there, because this is what I said in the beginning in the crazy comments, that there was somebody who was making a comment here that the speaker is more important than the speech. So the messenger is more important than the message itself. Can you believe it? This is what some Muslim wrote. So he says the person should be considered first before whatever he says. So whatever nonsense somebody says who said something that was true in the past, you have to believe it. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. But this is what Islam does to a brain. You are being indoctrinated with this. Obey, obey, obey. Don't think for yourself. Follow some scholar, and you have to follow what he thought, and what he tells you. This is what you think. What can you do?
This. Do you know of any African which has feet like this? Now, why did Darwin describe these Africans who have feet like this? Because he has an idea in his head which he believes to be true, which is his actual theory. So because he believes it to be true,
even Darwin,
the evidence that he sees, anything could actually be evidence. Also, when Darwin went to South America, he did the same thing with the South Americans, because he believed the white race, the Caucasian race, was the highest. So when he described the Fujian people, he's...
I'm sorry, I'm just reading the comment here. As usual, atheists have no independent mind of their own, just brainwashed, boring people with false propaganda that's easy to debunk. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Who's that delusional character that's saying that? I don't see the comments at the moment. Everybody's entitled to their delusion.
Okay. Debunk what propaganda? I am the one who's reacting to the propaganda by Muslims, by Muslim apologists, by some Muslim apologists. This is what I react to.
Where are you seeing that?
Oh, sorry?
Where's this in the comments?
Yes.
Oh,
these were people that used to grunt, they could hardly speak. Yet researchers, when they studied those same people around 30 years before Darwin, they said this is a sophisticated society which have a language of about 30,000 words. So Darwin, he already believed this theory to be true, so anything was actually evidence. Now, the last point which I want to make is this. No, wait, hang on. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, wasn't a racist. The Islamic civilization wasn't racist. You can't say Darwin.
So why do you have Islamic slavery? What was the justification for Islamic slavery in Africa? Right? Islamic slavery in Africa started before Europe.
Okay. I need to respond.
So, right. Any fossil which he brings up is the same as the genetic evidence, the same as the anatomical evidence, is still based on the assumption of homology, which, by the way, and this thing Phil has not addressed at all. He has not addressed this point at all, which is...
I'm sorry, he has refuted every single point that he's brought up. He's showed him that he doesn't understand what he's talking about, and now he says nothing has been... I can't understand this.
Homology...
Oh, is there somebody else who's doing this?
I don't know if it's the same guy.
I've seen the name before. Whenever these fools get rinsed in debates...
I think maybe his brain needs rinsing.
Necessary condition to establish human chimp ancestry is not sufficient. For it to even remotely be sufficient, you need a mechanism of natural selection or any other mechanism. And this whole time, he did not speak even the smallest amount about the mechanism. Without the mechanism, at best, all you have is a story.
Okay. Let me read you the paper that Subboor thinks is evidence.
Now listen to this. Because this is what Phil is now reading part of the paper for this bipedal ape. So let's listen into this. Because Phil didn't have this paper prior. So he's been reading. He had a quick look at this now because Subboor brought this up out of the blue. So let's listen in what's
hang on, this is Subboor's paper.
This is the paper that talks about this bipedal ape. Yeah.
He just gave me says.
No. I gave you the paper with the name of the actual fossil.
Results. Results further show that the sacred exhibits relatively small petroglyphal articular facet surface areas and mediolaterally narrow, also compared with modern humans, indicating that the morphology of Oreopithecus sacrum is incompatible with the functional demands of habitual bipedal stance and locomotion. The Oreopithecus lumbosus region does not exhibit adaptations for habitual bipedal locomotion. So you're...
Oh boy. Oh boy. That's what it looks like when you bring a claim that you haven't read, you didn't understand, and in fact the conclusion says exactly the opposite.
Game, set, and match. Come on.
That doesn't disprove all the claims, but I mean, if you're going to bring something else, at least read the entire thing. My goodness.
Own paper contradicts you.
No.
Yes, it does. Right, now hang on.
Hang on.
I didn't interrupt. I've got to respond.
Go on.
Okay, and we've got to wrap up because we've been here more than 2 hours. Okay, right.
I didn't. Wait. Hang on.
I didn't
This
interrupt
ape is
I didn't interrupt you.
Wait. Hang on a second. Before you make your point, let me just make a simple point about this. No. This particular ape, it can walk on two. And it doesn't do that all the time. It also has locomotion. But Lucy was something which they think was transitioning towards actual bipedalism, or according to some. According to some. Wait, hang on a second. According to some. Wait, hang on. According to some, it was fully bipedal. Whatever it actually is, the point which I was actually making is this: why would they go with something which is 4 million years old and not go with something which is 10 million years old? Because they had a previous theory of this, right? And even if there was no fossil evidence of any hominid, which is what you said earlier about Henry Gee, even if there was no fossils, human chimp ancestry would still be true, which is what you said earlier.
We have independent evidence from
no, you don't have independent evidence because it's based on the assumption of homology.
From embryology, we have, yes, it would be true if we had no fossils. Because
exactly, that's the point.
No, Subboor.
You just admitted the same point.
No, okay, let me finish. Right? Okay. The whole point is, yes, it would be true if we had no fossils.
There you go.
Sorry, can I finish without you interrupting?
So what's the... Okay, go on.
Okay, because we have multiple lines of evidence from independent fields of study. So if we didn't have any fossils, and there's no reason why we have to have fossils, it's very difficult for a fossil to form. It's very rare that a fossil ever is going to form. So there's no reason why we have to have fossils, okay? So if we didn't have any fossils, we've still got the genetics, we've still got the biogeography, we have other lines of evidence. And that's what Henry Gee was saying. Right, but we do have the fossils. Now, he's saying that this thing can occasionally be bipedal. That's irrelevant. Lots of animals can occasionally go up on their feet, right? A meerkat can occasionally go up on its feet. But what is interesting to paleontology is whether you have an animal that actually predominantly walks on its feet. That's what you need a particular anatomy for. So you have something, the way the skull attaches to the rest of the body, that has to be a certain way if you're going to have consistent bipedal walking. And that's what Australopithecus has. And Australopithecus has these transitional forms. It has a spine, an attachment of the magnum, I forget the name, magnum something is the name of the attachment. And that attaches just like it's bipedal. But it also has features that are similar to chimpanzees, because it has fingers and feet that are more flexible, so that it can climb trees as well. So that's the transitional forms that we have. Okay. Now he was talking about racism. I mean, saying Darwin was racist. Almost everyone in the 19th century.
That's not
racist,
true,
right?
That's not true. But I do. Sorry.
Okay, this is crazy. I need a break. Can you handle this for a minute?
You take a moment's break if you like. Are you going to the toilet or something? Because I can't obviously run it. I can't control the video. So I've got to wait for you to come back. But we'll chat in the meantime if you need to. Thunderous, are you there?
I most certainly am. I'm watching this video, and to be honest with you, I think I lost interest about half an hour ago because this guy just repeats himself.
I appreciate you might, obviously not believe in evolution, etc. But actually, I haven't asked you if you do or not. But at least, you've got.
I don't believe in evolution. No, I'll be honest with you.
Okay, cool.
I think when I mentioned the intelligent design a couple of weeks ago, you kind of like went straight to the Discovery Institute.
Like I said,
and acknowledge that that's what that's where my main information comes from, which is it isn't the case, but I do accept that I identify with many of their books, and I do read a lot of their writings. In fairness,
I mean, it would be worth looking at some of your fellow Christians that fully accept evolution, because either those people are also experts, and I think Michael Behe, for example, with Darwin's Black Box, etc., has got some level of expertise in that as well. So I think from your point of view, it'd be good to look at the other side as well, because there are Christians who can reconcile this or seem to be able to.
I hear what you're saying there, but that cannot reconcile itself with the biblical narrative, and I'll give an example. For instance, when you look at the nation of Israel, they didn't perceive Adam and Eve as allegorical. They perceived Adam and Eve as real people. When you look at the writings of Paul, state that Adam was a real person, not an allegorical, fictitious character that made a mistake and we've inherited some kind of imperfection from him. That's merely allegorical too. The interesting one for me is when Jesus talks about marriage. He says, Jesus makes this interesting statement. He says, "Did you not know he who made them in the beginning made them male and female?" So even whether you accept Jesus or not, but when you look at the biblical narrative, Jesus himself says that Adam and Eve were real people. They weren't allegorical. So I don't see how any Christian or so-called Christian can reconcile evolution with the biblical narrative.
Maybe that's a case of I haven't looked into it, but maybe it's a case of checking how did they do that, and if your belief is that it must be that it's impossible for it to be allegorical, and some Christians do believe that. Yeah. If you feel like the scripture's overwhelming in that case, then you are committed to rejecting evolution. But I do find it fascinating that there are a number of far more Christians than obviously Muslims. Muslims are playing catch-up. That's not to say there aren't some intelligent Muslims. They clearly are. But in general, Muslims are playing catch-up. But there are many Christians that do accept evolution. And so, and they are committed Christians like yourself. And so they're obviously trying to find a way to reconcile the two. I just think it's problematic to reject evolution because it undermines the literal case. I mean, if evolution were true, then either yourself, you would need to, question your entire belief system, or you would potentially have to go, okay, then the stories in the Bible are, regardless of what the Jews or anybody else thought, then those must be literal, or they must be reinterpreted in such a way as to match evolution. But I think just rejecting evolution because you feel they are literal.
My rejection of evolution
but this is another day.
Isn't based on the biblical narrative. My rejection of evolution comes way before even looked at the biblical narrative. As I've said, I'm an ex-Muslim, so I didn't go from the Quranic narrative straight over to the biblical narrative. There was a period in between where I was neither, and in fact I would have considered myself as an evolutionist during that period of time. It was only when I started questioning things a little bit more, looking a bit more closer at what I was believing at the time. Now, when you turn around and say about there are many intelligent Christians who can reconcile evolution with the Bible, if it was me, and let's just suppose, for instance, from my perspective, that evolution was true, there would be no need for me to ever question or even look at the biblical narrative again. I may as well just throw it out the window as I've done the Quran. It would have no relevance or bearing on my lifestyle at all. If anything, I may as well go back to the drink and drugs and the fornication and things like that. After all, tomorrow I will die, as the Apostle Paul said. If there is no
it seems like to me. But
I'm a 50-year-old man. I've got more days from the evolution narrative. I've got more days behind me than I've got ahead of me. So I may as well live what little life I've got left with as much enjoyment as I possibly can, fleshly and selfish enjoyment as possibly can. Because when I'm dead, that is it. That would be my evolutionary outlook. There'll be no need. So go on.
It seems to me you're throwing out the baby with the bathwater. You're saying, "Hey, if evolution is true, I've got to abandon the entire Christianity." It could be. It could be.
Why would I not abandon it? It'd be
I'm going to say to you why.
Follow it.
Well, I'll say to you why. Because it could be that in fact there's another interpretation to the Bible, and in fact, like I say, some Christians believe that God lit the spark of the universe, and evolution was just a methodology that God employed.
But so that proves the Bible a lie, because it says He created a male and female. We give the account of Adam's rib to being fashioned into a woman, the Adamic sin in the Garden of Eden. Then you got Noah's flood. So at what point do you start questioning what is allegorical and what is reality? As I've said, everybody up until the 18th century believed that nothing was allegorical and it was all reality. It's only when people started coming forward with evolution as an alternative that people started questioning the biblical narrative or trying to juxtapose the two ideas.
Okay, but why did they do that, though, Thunderous? Why did they do that? Because it seems to me. And obviously that was the 1800s, but we've learned such a lot now because the evidence is overwhelming. So they obviously wanted to hold on to Christianity. I agree with you to some degree that for them, from your point of view, it could seem to you that they are being inconsistent. I'm not denying that could possibly be the case. But the reason that some of the Christians started doing that, because the overwhelming evidence points in that direction, and because they understood it so well that they couldn't, in all good conscience, go, I'm just going to deny this now because I understand it so well. I'm just going to deny it. So obviously what they're trying to do, and I take your point in the sense, they're trying to go, okay, I really want to hold on to Jesus and I want to hold on to God, but I cannot deny evolution if I'm going to be an honest human being. So how do I make evolution and Christianity work? And I think Christians or anybody else that denies evolution just doesn't understand it that well, because you are claiming, or Christians that do are claiming, that people that are experts in this field, far more so than I believe than the intelligent design people who have a clear bias that they've got to try and work backwards. These people accept it and they are honest Christians. So to me, it's like I can understand where you're coming from in the sense of like they could be, but then they cannot possibly deny evolution. And if this is the case, is it not incumbent on theists then to look into this and go, okay, well, if my fellow Christians who are experts in this field are claiming that, should I not look into it? I mean, is it a case that, if you found it to be true, would your whole worldview, like you say, just collapse, and then you feel like, okay, I've got nothing to live for?
Well, absolutely. I would have nothing to live for, wouldn't I? What would be the point of life? The life would be meaningless. I've only been here for about whatever the length of time that I've been here, and then I'm dead forever. So, from an evolutionary point of view, there is no purpose of life apart from producing. And that we're going with Richard Dawkins, and he says the whole point was to produce DNA for another generation.
Yeah, but that's just
I've utterly failed in that because I have no children either. So.
Yeah, but that's just from a Darwinian point of view. As Sam Harris and many other people have said, we've outgrown the natural, the Darwinistic mechanism in the sense of like we don't. And you're pointing to Dawkins. Even Dawkins says he would not want a world in which the morals and our life was governed by Darwinistic mechanisms. So the fact that gave us the biological reasons to be, it doesn't mean that we need to follow that in every aspect of life. And we've outgrown that. We've flown the perch, I think is the term that was used by Harris and others.
Some people have outgrown it. I don't believe that it could be so objective as that. I think, a lot of things will be subjective, more subjective if it's evolutionary than objective. But then if you want a discussion as to why I accept evolution as a fraud, or I don't accept it for whatever reason, and why I accept intelligent design, that's a separate discussion I'm willing to have on another occasion.
Yeah. No, that's fine. No, we just went off because Stops had taken a walk away, and we kind of got a bit sidetracked on that one.
I find it hard listening to this Muslim guy because even though he in effect is trying to defend in his own way, while I uphold, I wouldn't have necessarily gone the route that he. In fact, I definitely would not have gone the route that he is. And I think he is a shoddy performer in this area, and it's embarrassing, to be honest with you, because the other guy who's promoting atheism evolution has done a fantastic job in doing it.
Yeah, and I think at least in that case, you as a theist can see that this is not a good way, but it's intellectually dishonest, especially when you refute the claims, especially when he doesn't know what he's talking about. If you want to bring an argument, fine, bring a good argument or the best argument you can. But if it's challenged, or if it's shown that you don't know what you're talking about, then you need to concede points. He's never conceded a single point here. So I think this is the point that and I had a recent conversation with Phil. He said, I'm not interested anymore. I'm just not interested in speaking to this guy after this 2-hour thing. I think he's done a good enough job here. He's like, no, I wouldn't bother again. I would not bother again. And he's very, as we can see, he's very polite generally. I mean, towards the end here, it got a little bit more heated, but nothing like, what we would consider heated. I mean, it's lukewarm really compared to some discussions here. And he's very charitable and he's very gentlemanly.
It's been a very respectful conversation, hasn't it, in fairness to them, but they've not sort of outshouted each other or argued over each other in the typical Muslim way when you listen to, say, other Muslim debaters or discussants on their faith. It's been enjoyable in that sense because they've been respectful in the way that they've handled each other. But I just find that the content from the side of the Muslim guy has been lacking.
Yeah, you're being very charitable when you say lacking. It's non-existent. I'll keep repeating homology. I've got no evidence. When I bring this bipedal ape, Phil actually goes and reads the paper live because he's not seen that paper before, and it refutes the claim. And does Subboor say, you know what, actually, I didn't read that, or let me go look into that? No, he goes on to another point.
I nearly choked on my cup of tea when he turned around and says that Islam wasn't racist. I'm thinking, you don't even know enough about Islam either, never mind intelligent design.
No, exactly. And they've been pushed back such a lot by atheists and ex-Muslims and so forth that, I've heard him stand on the ladder and try and defend Islam with the miracle claims. And then he just descends to one of the other Muslims in the park. So, of course, what he's done now is he can't really defend Islam with any sort of, strong arguments. So now his approach, his modus operandi is, let me challenge evolution, because that puts atheists on the back foot, which is fine. Then you've got to, like Phil's brought the evidence here. But ask him to defend Islam, and he'll be floating at sea like most other Muslims. Not any better. He can just shout loudly, but he's not any better at doing that. So stop. So you're back.
Yeah, long time.
Sorry. How much longer has this one got to go? Because I would like to see it towards the end at least. But if it's going to be long, then
we are on 105 of 125.
Well, let's go for a little bit longer
then
and just see.
We need to skip a little bit.
Irrelevant. It's completely and utterly irrelevant. The evidence that we share common ancestries with chimpanzees, there's nothing racist about that. The idea we say that the genetic diversity is highest in Africans because the fossil evidence leads us to Africa. Okay.
Should I jump to 115?
About African people.
Hang on one sec. Let's just finish this point, then jump there.
Okay. All it's saying is that's where we find the fossils, so that's where we should find the genetic diversity. We have the hypothesis.
Well, why not the fossil in Italy?
Because it's not a bipedal ape. That's why. Okay, I'm done.
Right, stop there.
You can conclude.
Hang on.
You can jump on a little bit. Okay, so he's clearly shown that it's not a bipedal ape. Even the paper says it's not a bipedal ape, and he wants to leave now. And of course, Subboor doesn't want to be shown to be, having been refuted, which clearly he has. And so now it's a case of no, I'm not going to let you go. I'm going to try and bring up another irrelevant point or bring up some other point, so it looks like at the end I've won. But
is he going to do the chicken again?
No, he doesn't do that. But he does, unfortunately. Content over everything, let him do a long monologue at the end of his summary, and of course Phil had left at that stage. So we're entirely justified. So at least we'll do the summary at the end then, if nothing else, because he carried on. I think COE should have cut it when the two of them stopped and not allowed Subboor to do a long monologue unchallenged by Phil after Phil had left. But there you go.
However long the Q&A is, something like this. Yeah.
We've been here for 2 hours.
So tell me this. So tell me this.
Right?
Tell me this.
And we're going round and round in circles.
Tell me this. Tell me if my summary of you is wrong. You began off with it's true. It is actually true. And I began off with it is an assumption of homology which cannot be disproven. And this is still based on methodological naturalism, still based on the idea that even if homology was true, it would be necessary condition for human-chimp ancestry, not a sufficient one, because you still have to have a mechanism of natural selection, which you didn't deal with. In our conversation, it devolved to a point where you admitted the assumption is there. You admitted the assumption is there, but what you're still trying to do is you're still trying to say the assumption is validated based on probabilities.
Okay. What I said was,
No, it's not.
that human and chimp common ancestry is a fact, and it's a fact because the data overwhelmingly supports it. And that's not just me saying that. This is what the human chimp, the chimpanzee genome consortium said in their paper. Sorry,
I know what he's saying.
So why did why do philosophers of science and philosophers of biology and
you are
evolutionary biologists?
misquoting those philosophers. Elliot Sober, you quoted him as saying that you can't infer common ancestry from similarities. Right?
That's not what he says there.
Yes, it is what
He says you can't say it's a must, it's true.
Right, it's okay, I agree with him. It's not.
And that's the point I was making.
No, Subboor, you're not. It's not must be true because of an assumption of common ancestry. The whole point I'm saying is you don't conclude it because of your assumption of homology, right? You do it because the data confirms it.
And I summarize your.
And that's how easy it is. I mean, Phil is so good in communicating very, very complex facts. And it's so easy to understand when you listen to him, and it's straight over Subboor's head. He does not comprehend it. He just goes back and back to exactly the same thing that he said 2 hours earlier.
I summarized your argument, which was similarities are due to common ancestry. Similarities exist, therefore common ancestry is true.
He's not learned anything.
This is circular reasoning which you've been doing throughout this 2 hours.
We're going to have to finish it. Thank you very much.
But you do realize your original point, you devolved from it.
We've discussed it for 2.5 hours. People can watch the discussion and then they can make their own.
We will make our own minds up.
Yes. I want you to understand something, right?
Subboor, look, we're going over the same thing again and again.
Phil should have walked away here.
Do you think your position has actually changed? Because your position in the beginning and the end was different.
No, it hasn't. You've just misunderstood it. You've misunderstood it. That's all it is.
Okay,
that's all it is.
Okay, but here's the thing. When we have these,
it's not a circular argument.
It is
because you're saying we start with an assumption of homology and therefore we conclude homology. Now, a circular argument is that there's no way out of the circle, right? But in here we have the data, and the data can either confirm or deny the hypothesis, right? And it confirms it, and that's why it's not a circular argument, because the data can easily refute it, and that's what you don't understand.
The data cannot refute it.
Well, we'll have to disagree.
Because as we pointed out, and you disagreed with this, we have sociological evidence, which is different. We also have the fact that even genetically, that we have some things in the human and chimp genome which are different, but nothing. Nothing can actually.
The genes are going to be identical. That's a stupid thing to say.
No, it's not.
Because no one is saying that. If the human genome.
Right, let's stop there. Stop there.
This is going absolutely nowhere.
That point. That's like you and I like cursing seriously. When he says stupid like that with that tone, and I've known for a little while now, not for years, but for a little while. At that point, you know that at this point, you know, that's as probably as rude as he ever be, and that's not even rude. You know, at that point, that's for him is like you and I would be, you know, going off our tops at this stage. So there we go. To be scientifically literate is to empower yourself to know when someone else is full of bullshit. Neil deGrasse Tyson. Yes. There we go. I think the video is there for you to watch. Stops if you can just post it there for anybody who hasn't seen it. I mean, if you haven't seen it. But again, you know, whether you believe in evolution or not, at least look at, you know, the evidence that's been presenting. If you're going to present bad evidence, this fossil was found in Italy, and in fact the paper that you yourself bring does not claim what you claim. That is a serious problem. But of course, we'll have Muslims here, and people who watch this will go right over their head. They will still carry on believing this is an honest, genuine guy that has really got expertise in this field, and that's the dangerous part. Not that he's talking nonsense, but that people believe it. That's the unfortunate / dangerous part about it. What else can we say about it? I don't have a problem with theists bringing arguments. I have a problem when they bring arguments that are refuted. They know they're refuted, and they're not prepared to concede it. So, like the universe, we don't know what happened at the beginning of the universe. I mean, there could be a creator. I mean, I don't see good reason to postulate that hypothesis, but we can't rule it out. But, at least bring, decent things. But I don't know. And that's a problem with this sort of thing. So there we go.
Okay, so this was a summary where we can see that science, or the literacy in science, is not all that difficult. It is something that you can educate yourself on. It is something that you can learn. And this is the best thing that you can do to combat ignorance. And the way that Subboor is arguing is so, it's so two-dimensional. It's so absolutely stupid, really stupid. This is what Phil said in the end. That's exactly what it is. Because he doesn't have a point. He doesn't have anything. He doesn't understand what he's saying. And he has been shown again and again and again that he does not understand evolution. He does not understand the theory of evolution.
And I think that's the other point is, stops Muslims go, like we've got in the chat here, why don't you go and debate him? Like Detective Inspector Monkfish has investigated this even deeper than Phil. In fact, he and Phil had a conversation prior to that debate as well. And he's gone into it even deeper. And Phil said he was quite impressed. So, Det, if you're listening, that's something that Phil said. I'm saying it live on the show here. And for Phil to say that, that's, I think, pretty good praise. But people go, why doesn't Detective Inspector Monkfish do it? Because we've seen this sort of thing. The only way that you can do this now is in a some sort of formal debate, where this sort of shouting and hand waving and avoiding questions and stuff like that is harder to do. Speaker's Corner is clearly a place, if you have a tactic, you can avoid things. You know that your team is just going to accept it. And of course, the people who are going to investigate this thing, you don't care about them anyway, because you've got some sort of backdoor. You can just keep claiming homology is circular and then pat yourself on the back. So it's an unfalsifiable claim, and you don't care. Whatever evidence brings to you, you can just keep repeating the same mantra. So this is part of the reason why people that now know how Subboor operates, there's no point in having that discussion. I think what Phil did so well here is just brought the evidence. There was no rebuttal to the actual scientific evidence. There was just this claim about homology. Then there was the mistaken claim about methodological naturalism, and science is based on that. That was also refuted. So, in fact, I don't know. I'm waiting for them to publish this stupid book, Detective Inspector Monkfish. So you might still do some sort of debate. The other way that people can do it is a written debate. Also, he's come on here. James S.C. lost against Subboor. He hasn't lost anything. But, okay, well, Stax, if you're going to make these sort of sweeping generalizations, can you give us one claim that James said that Subboor has either refuted or rebutted? By the way, do you know the difference between a rebuttal and a refutation, Stax? Please post, don't anybody say it here. Please post in the chat if you know the difference between a rebuttal and a refutation. I would be interested to know if you know that point without Googling it. But of course, Allah's watching you, so I'll leave it at that.
Alternatively, we have some Muslims in the chat. Is there any Muslim here in the chat who can show me anything, just one single item from the Quran that is correct, that is verifiably correct? Just one thing, just one. That's it. I wonder if somebody can come up with something that is verifiably correct. Because I maintain you can't. That's how easy it is to shut up any apologist who's propagating that there's something true in the Quran and that there's something wonderful. It's not.
And I think Thunderous, having been an ex-Muslim now, maybe I can get your view on this. Thunderous, now looking back, okay, I know you're a Christian, but you're an ex-Muslim, whatever, looking back now on the Quran, what is your thoughts about it now?
When I was growing up as a Muslim, it was kind of obvious. It's hard to describe my state of mind, but it was kind of obvious this religion is a load of rubbish.
Really? You knew it as a child?
I knew that. I think one of the reasons why is because as a 50-year-old man, society was a little bit more Christian than it is now. So when you were going to school, you were getting influenced in school assemblies and things like that with what the Bible taught. And I kind of like you. Kind of subconsciously are comparing Muhammad with Jesus. I know many people don't do that, but they weren't brought up in the background that I was. So I'm comparing Muhammad with Jesus, and every time I did that comparison, it was always like, I prefer Jesus than Muhammad. This guy is just weird. This guy's old. This guy's violent. This guy's rude. Being brought up in the community, I could see how racist it was against non-Muslims, how racist it was against other Muslims, fellow Muslims in their own community. You were brought up in an environment of hate. So there were many reasons why I rejected Islam. All I see now is when I look at Islam now, I see it more pronounced. The very reasons why I left it have become more pronounced. That's how I describe it.
Okay, so it wasn't like you fully believed in the Quran and you thought it was absolutely true, and now you look back on it like I hear other Muslims, they look at the Quran, they go, how on earth could I possibly have believed this was from God? They're like, face palming themselves. So that wasn't necessarily your position. You were already questioning it at a very young age.
Yeah, absolutely. There was, when you come across things like Muhammad having a 6-year-old wife, when you come across things like 90 for Adam, when you come across things, I mean, just the vitriol and manifesto of Allah ranting about hell, for instance. But then when you're looking at another book that it's supposed to supersede, and there's hardly any mention of any punishment by God, you can't think, well, there's two different gods at play here. It's not consistent. It's like an episode of EastEnders, Part 1, and then Part 2 is an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. It just doesn't fit, no matter how you try and fudge the two programs together. And that was how I perceived it. So as soon as I was old enough legally to leave home, in effect, it was my statement of I'm leaving Islam too.
Okay, cool. Is there any other questions in the chat? Just let us know if you've got a question or comment about this, either about science or about this debate or anything else. I think it's clear that those Muslims who are not going to look up any of these claims and they're available in books to read will believe that Subboor quote won. I'm not sure what he actually won other than shouting loudly and repeating himself on those 2 points. He's by far the victor. I can't deny that. He's victorious at repeating himself and shouting loudly. If that's your standard for winning, then obviously I think we have a slightly different standard. I care about the truth, and I don't think he brought any factual statements that he could demonstrate. And when he tried to bring one, it was refuted live in the park. I'm not talking rebutted. It was refuted when Phil read out the paper. It said exactly the opposite of what the claim was. I mean, if that's not an open rebuttal, what else is?
When you comment about...
we are not talking about Jesus here. We are not talking about Christianity here. We're talking about Islam. Islam says 2/3 plus 1/3 plus an eighth equals 1. Can you explain that, please?
No, thank God. I brought that up.
Jesus and 1 plus 1 plus 1. That's stupid. Christianity does not say 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. But Islam says 2/3 plus 1/3 plus an eighth equals 1. That's the difference. No, Islam does not say 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 1. Islam says 2/3 plus 1/3 plus an eighth equals 1.
Yes, I brought this up, and of course they danced around it in some hangout. I can't remember which one. And then they went away patting themselves on the back. I mean, this is a knockdown argument, as we've pointed out. But either people can't add, or more likely God can't add, if there were that version of a God. But it's much more likely that it was Arab people who made this book up, and just couldn't do basic maths in the 7th century. So, and that's my thing. When I look at the Quran, I cannot believe that human beings who engage critical thinking could possibly think this came from a God, unless their level for a God is so utterly low that the God is more clueless than virtually every human being that's had a secondary school education. So it's just baffling to me. But there we go.
Come on. Is there any Muslim here that can give me anything, just one single thing that is correct in the Quran, that is verifiably correct in the Quran? Just one thing, just one. You can't. And yet you go and you peck on Christians. How stupid, how childish is it? How really primitive is it that you cannot even go and defend your own, what is it? Claims, your own scripture, your own books.
Yeah, and even if they prove Christianity
go and criticize
wrong,
others.
Yeah, and even if they prove Christianity wrong, which they haven't done, of course, that wouldn't prove their religion is true. Something else could be true.
Correct.
You've got to prove yours is true, and yours is the only version that could possibly be true. If you haven't done that, you haven't done your homework. Go on, Thunderous, you were going to say something?
No, well, I forgot my train of thought, but I think I think it was on the point of when you were talking about the other guy, shouting louder and being more, say, aggressive in his discussion, and Muslims cheering the guy on as if he'd won the discussion. But history teaches with Muslim debaters that is their tactic. That is the only way that they have a discussion. That is the only way that a topic is discussed with people of an opposing point of view. There is no other version. Oh, I'm being disingenuous. There are probably one or two other Muslims that are, that debate a little bit more maturely and respectfully, but those are few and far between. And I think a typical example in recent times is Muhammad Hijab versus David Wood.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't watch the whole debate, so I can't say on the factual claims one way or the other.
What do you call that?
What you talking about?
The debate between hijab and wood. What do you call that?
No, what I said was that when talking about how in this discussion that we've just been watching, how the guy repeats himself and he was getting a bit louder and a little bit more belligerent towards the end, and I was just saying, but that's systematic and typical of every Muslim debater or Muslim that has a discussion, whether it's in front of an audience or whether it's one-on-one on a street corner. And that's sort of like what I've actually been brought up with, and I was brought up with the Didat debates. When Ahmad Didat, the forerunner to Fake and Naik, and it's not changed. It has not changed one iota in the way that they discuss things.
Oh, I thought you said that the hijab wood debate showed that you can also get sophisticated argumentation on the side of a Muslim.
No, I said that there probably are Muslims out there that they're few and far between that do have probably an intellectual side to where they discuss or have a debate more rationally, more maturely, and in a more sophisticated manner. But you have seldom find them, and I was saying that the typical example that you have now is what we recently had with Muhammad Hijab and David Wood. That would be, there's the gold standard.
Yeah,
sorry, I still don't understand it. What is the debate between Wood and hijab?
No, he's saying, let me repeat it. He's saying that the methodology of the debate was very poor. And another example is hijab, with his shouting and his condescension and all that sort of stuff in that discussion. So in other words, the tactics that the Muslim debaters used hasn't changed, and it was again shown with hijab, behaving like an ass.
Is that what you were saying?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Then, because I couldn't quite understand whether you were saying that this was a typical example of how bad the standard is, or a typical example of how the standard is improving.
No, I'm just saying from my experience of the past, say, let's just say, even though I'm 50 now, I've been watching Muslim debates for 40 years, because indeed that was what I was growing up with, and I'm saying, yes, I have not seen a change in their tactic. I've not seen a change in their style. And when there was just something I think Rob said that they feel that if they have an argument with a religion or a debate with religion, and they can try and prove that religion false, that somehow by proving one religion false, must mean that Islam is true. They don't prove Islam true. It's just by default that if you can win an argument, then that must mean that the argument that you're proposing is true.
Yeah.
And that was I think the point I was trying to get at, and perhaps I wasn't so clear in my.
No, I got it now. No, I was on the wrong track. Look at this idiot. 1 + 1 = I. 1 + 1 + 1 equals I.
Do they have to keep repeating that 1953 tract of Jehovah's Witnesses? 1 + 1 + 1.
Yeah.
Well,
it's so strange because nobody is making that claim, and yet he carries on about this. He will not go and accept that nobody in Christianity is saying 1 + 1 + 1 = 1, and yet in Islam everybody has to agree. Every Muslim must accept that 2/3 + 1/3 + 1/8 = 1.
They do that now, Stops and Robs. I think I'm beginning to discern what's taking place here, because on every single argument now that you have with a Muslim, they're absolutely trumped in every area on the Quran and what they believe. The only argument that they've got now is the Trinity. It is the only one that they think that they've got some kind of persuasion on, because absolutely everything else, whether irrespective of whether you believe Jesus existed or not, if you had the discussion about whether Jesus died, what the Bible teaches, or whether Jesus didn't die, what the Quran teaches, they lose every time. When you're talking about other examples and comparisons between Judaism, Christianity versus Islam, and any of the teachings that they have, they lose every time. The only argument or weight that they have in their discussion now is the Trinity.
Yeah, so obviously for them, it's a case of let's challenge Christianity on the Trinity. Like you say, that's pretty much the only thing I hear from them, really. And they take great delight in Speaker's Corner of challenging Christians who wander through there, who are not sophisticated, who haven't really looked into this in that way. And then they take great delight as if they've refuted Christianity. Because there's a few Christians that don't, none of us are walking encyclopedias. Some know more than others because they've looked into the topic, but they take great delight. But hey, when you find a Muslim who comes to you, by the way, and Uncle Omar was one of those who came to me, we had a discussion and it didn't look good for him. And I wasn't trying to do anything other than, ask questions. Then, of course, you're accused of going after the low-hanging fruit. But, of course, when it happens the other way around, they pat themselves on the back. Look at these idiot Christians. How can anybody be a Christian?
Yeah.
I mean, the double standard, the hypocrisy is just so blatant for everybody and even a few Muslims do, by the way. I've got Muslim sort of cohorts, if I could use that term, Muslims who we chat in different groups on Facebook. And there's a few of them, granted not many that I've come across. That doesn't mean there aren't others, but certainly there are a few of them. And they've pointed out, the hypocrisy and stuff in their fellow Muslims, which I appreciate because it happens so seldom. Is this whole thing of you can't criticize your brother. I mean, if Stoff suddenly said that Hitler was the best example, he and I would have a whole, show on that. We've disagreed in the past, and so there's this whole thing with Islam that you can't criticize, another Muslim, which is complete nonsense. If you're an intellectually honest Muslim, you will look these claims up, and that doesn't refute Islam, but it does refute your fellow Muslim if they're making a claim like Subboor in this thing and full refuted it on the spot, live in Speaker's Corner without preparation. I mean, what else do you need?
Well, that's an interesting point raised there, because in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, I think it's verse 18, the Apostle Paul talks about you should all be fitly united in the same mind and in the same line of thought. So being critical of what your brother believes as far as a biblical doctrine concerned means that you would question him if he's not believing in something that is in line with what your theology is. And you can take that principle to any religion, Hinduism, Judaism, and even Islam. So a brother or one person in Islam should be able to question another member of Islam if they're not singing from the same hymn sheet, so to speak, because there has to be consistency.
Yeah. Well, MStax, if you want to come on, and we'll go to an after show if you don't want to do it live, so that the view. But if you want to come on an after show, Thunderous is here, I'm here, Stops is here, and we can post the link, and you're welcome to come in and chat. Well, I don't know, I won't speak for Thunderous. Thunderous can speak for himself. If you want this Muslim fellow who thinks that the Bible refutes itself, it's so stupid, it's mad. How can Thunderous leave Islam and join the most barbaric religion?
Please come on. I hope he comes on.
No, he's too much of a coward. When they're in the chat, they're very strong. They open their mouth, but then when you tell them, okay, then give me something that is correct, suddenly they have nothing. Zero. Zilch.
Do we want to do a hadith of the day?
And embarrass himself? No, come on.
Hadith Stops, and we can post a link and go to an after chat for a little while, and if that gets boring, we can always leave. So if you want to do a hadith, and we'll post it, anybody who's watching wants to come to an after show. For those who don't know, an after show is the hangout, but it's no longer live or recorded, so you can safely talk a little bit of nonsense and the whole world won't hear you. But if you come on this show, then of course it is recorded. There you go.
Here's the hangout. If you want to join just now, I'll quickly read the hadith, which is, today it's about science. Okay, it's not embryology, it's not about evolution or anything, it's meteorology. Narrated Ibn Abbas, the Jews came to the Prophet and said, "O Abul Qasim, inform us about the thunder. What is it?" Now, this is thunder, okay, not lightning, thunder. He said, an angel among the angels who is responsible for the clouds. He has a piece of fire whenever that he drives the clouds wherever Allah wills. They said, then what is this noise we hear? He said, it is him striking the clouds when he drives them on until it goes where it is ordered. They said, you have told the truth. Then inform us about what Israel made unlawful for himself. So he said he suffered from sciatica. What is sciatica? Or sciatica. And he could not find anything agreeable due to it consuming except for camel meat and its milk. So for that reason, he made it unlawful. They said, you have told the truth.
Sciatica, that's the pain in the back.
Oh, is that when the pinched nerve?
Yes.
Ah, okay. I thought that. All right. So this must be the lumbago. Okay. And this is from Al-Tirmidhi, Volume 1, Book 44, Hadith 3117. So if you want to know, if you want to know what thunder is, just go read Al-Tirmidhi, and he will tell you it's like when you take a donkey and you hit the donkey with a stick, the noise that it makes, except if it's an angel beating the clouds, this is what thunder is.
Okay, I was going to type it in there. If you are on a mobile phone, we've posted the link. If you're battling to get in because it gives you an error, the moment you click on the link, if you're on a mobile phone, and we give you the Hangout link in the chat there, and it's an error message, especially if you're on iOS, in an iPhone, I'm not sure if it works the same on Android. What you need to do is copy the link. So in other words, let it go to the error page on Chrome or Safari, whatever it is, then copy that link and email it to yourself. So open Apple Mail on your iPhone, put the link into the text part, not the subject, but into the text part of an email, send the email to yourself, open the email, click on the link, and it will open into the Hangout app. For some reason, on other browsers and so forth, it won't open directly. So you've got to go and open it from Apple email once you've sent the link to yourself. As long as you've got the Hangouts app installed, it would then allow you to join. Hopefully that makes sense for anybody who's on the phone. And that's a workaround for anybody who wants to join. Copy the link, put it into an email, and then double-click on it. Or tap on it, should I say.
V just gave, this is so sweet. She says, I'm going to hit the steep from my kettle with a stick and scientifically test this.
There you go. And let us know what result you get. So again, we'll post the link. We will go into an after show now, which I think is the stop broadcast button, if I remember correctly. Is it the stop broadcast?
I will do stop broadcast.
Leave call.
And I will do stop broadcast, and I will see if there's any Muslim who has any guts. My prediction, I'm not a prophet, but I will prophetize that no, there will not be any Muslim who is going to come and give us anything that is correct in the Quran. Guys, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. And if anybody wants to join, just come and tell us on Facebook. If anybody has a topic they wish to be discussed, please suggest it. We're always ears and always welcome for suggestions. If anybody has a topic they want to give a lecture on, just go ahead and we'll give you a slot and you can.
Okay, so just for interest. For interest, next week, I have a lady who wants to join us, so I will post the topic. She sent me a link. I think I sent it to you, Stops, to have a look at. So we'll just confirm that, and then obviously that'll come up in. If you sent me a thing there, okay. If you sent me a direct message, I don't always see them easily in here, but if you sent me one, M-Stacks, then I'll pick it up there somewhere. I don't see DMs there for some reason. I mean, if you're in one of the groups like Marshall's Empire or something like that, I'll post it there for people who want to join. All right, Stops, if you want to close it down then, and I will post the link wherever else I can for people.
Okay, guys. Cheery, bye. See you next week, Friday, same time, same place.
Bye. Thank you.